Chapter 2191. In the sixth ring of the buried sword abyss, a figure was wrapped in a gray storm of sword chi. Countless sword chi surged from all directions, whistling endlessly. It was very frightening. This situation lasted for over 20 days until the time was up. Unfortunately, I'm just a little short. Chu Mu couldn't help but feel a little regretful. A month's time was still too short. Just a little bit more, and he would be able to master the third level of the immemorial sword seal. However, rules were rules. Even if Chu Mu had the highest 12-star talent, he still had to abide by them. After leaving the buried sword abyss, he was just a little bit away from mastering the third level. He could only cultivate in the future. After leaving the buried sword abyss, Chu Mu quickly returned to the unique inn of the prodigy camp. After meditating for a while and adjusting his essence, energy, and spirit, he stood up and left the unique inn. His destination was the Sword Dao Skywall. The Sword Dao Skywall was a cultivation resource and environment that belonged to the Genius Camp and the Prodigy Camp. One could comprehend some Sword Dao techniques from it. As for what kind of Sword Dao techniques one comprehended, it was directly related to the cultivation method one cultivated and the laws one comprehended. The sword techniques I'm currently cultivating are the World's End and Sea Horn Sword Technique, White Horse Sword Technique, Sky Shattering Cloud Sword Technique, and Limitless Sword Technique. Chu Mu pondered as he headed towards the Sword Dao Sky Wall. The World's End and Sea Horn Sword Technique have already been eliminated. The White Horse Sword Technique is also gradually being eliminated. The Sky Shattering Cloud Sword Technique still has the 6th level, but it's also a relatively ordinary sword technique with insufficient potential. Only the Limitless Sword Technique is very mysterious and has a lot of potential to be unearthed. However, the Limitless Sword Technique is a skill-based sword technique. In terms of direct destructive power, it's somewhat lacking. I hope the Sword Dao Sky Wall won't disappoint me. Chu Mu thought. The Sword Dao Sky Wall was a pitch-black mountain wall erected on the ground. Its appearance was like an irregular giant sword. It emitted a very unique aura. It was as if its sharpness was world-shocking, as if it was simple and restrained, as if it was overbearing and vicissitudes of life. It was said that the Sword Dao Sky Wall was a treasure brought back from the depths of the chaotic universe by the first primordial sword sovereign. It contained endless mysteries. Comprehending the Sword Dao Heavenly Wall was not a simple matter. One had to pay a corresponding amount of clan merit points. Comprehending it for a day would cost 1 clan point, and so on. 10 days would be 10 points, and 100 days would be 100 points. Perhaps 1 clan merit point a day did not sound like much, but it should be known that it was difficult to comprehend anything in a day. Moreover, once one entered a state of comprehension, time would be out of one's control. It was possible that 10, 20, or even longer days would pass unknowingly. In the past, there had been cases where one's clan points had been deducted while they were comprehending something. Once the clan points were used up, they would be awakened and unable to continue comprehending. Chu Mu originally had 520 clan points. After exchanging for the immemorial sword seal cultivation technique, he had used up 10 points. After entering the burial sword abyss, he had used up 50 points. He was left with 460 points. If converted to the time needed to comprehend the Sword Dao Heavenly Wall, that would be 460 days. 1 year was more than enough. Moreover, Chu Mu didn't feel that he needed to comprehend it for that long. The pitch-black, ancient, and gigantic Sword Dao Sky Wall was incomparably smooth, and it could reflect all the scenery before it. In front of the Sword Dao Sky Wall, there were several people sitting cross-legged. Their eyes were shining as they stared at the Sword Dao Sky Wall, immersed in comprehension. There were a total of 9 praying mats in front of the Sword Dao Sky Wall. Now, there were only 3 left. Chu Mu casually chose one and sat down. He rapidly adjusted his thoughts and eliminated all distracting thoughts. After his essence, energy, and spirit reached their peak, he began to comprehend the Sword Dao sky wall. Immediately, his consciousness seemed to resonate with the Sword Dao sky wall and gradually entered it. Chu Mu only felt that there were countless rays of light shining in front of him. Those were the rays of light emitted by countless swords. Those rays of light were multicolored: red, orange, yellow, green, indigo, blue, purple, black, white, silver, gold, and so on. There were all sorts of shapes and forms: rivers, lakes, forests, valleys, ferocious beasts, and the auras were completely different. Some were sharp, some were cold, some were strange, and some were tyrannical. It didn't take long for Chu Mu to distinguish that the colors represented were closely related to the laws. For example, the crimson sword light emitted a blazing aura. That was the aura fluctuation of the laws of fire, the great Tao of fire. As for the different forms, they were related to the structure of the power. The mountain-like form was heavy and was good at crushing and suppressing. The water-like form was calm and surging, and so on. The aura was related to the style. If different people practiced the same sword technique, the style of the sword technique would be different. It could be faster, tyrannical, or strange. This was closely related to the character of the sword cultivator. There were countless sword lights in the Sword Dao sky wall, representing countless sword Daos. Yes, the combination of power, structure, and style would ultimately form the Sword Dao. Chu Mu's consciousness came into contact with the sword light. He could feel the aura and fluctuations contained within, as well as the various mysteries within. It could be said that each sword light represented a sword Dao. Each sword Dao was broad, profound, and incomparably mysterious. It was enough for a sword cultivator to comprehend for a lifetime. Chu Mu's way of thinking was different. What he practiced was not the power of laws, but the true intent. Now, the true intent, sword intent, and everything else had been refined into the origin of Sword Dao. The origin was a very high-end power that belonged to the peak of the great Dao. It made him feel as if he was standing on the shoulder of a giant, overlooking everything. Sword Dao was a way for a sword cultivator to use their own power. They used their sword as a conductor and released their power in the form of laws. Therefore, Sword Dao was very important to a sword cultivator. A good Sword Dao could allow a sword cultivator to better unleash their power or even surpass their limits. Chu Mu's ambition was to create his own Sword Dao. Only then would it be most suitable for him. Only then would he be able to fully unleash all the advantages of his power. Moreover, a self-created Sword Dao would have infinite potential because it was more suitable for him. Creating normal sword techniques wasn't difficult for Chu Mu. If he was willing, he could casually spend a bit of time and create many sword techniques. However, such sword techniques weren't what Chu Mu wanted. What he wanted was a sword technique that was most suitable for his limitless potential. The amount of time and effort required to create such a sword technique would be incomparably shocking. Accumulation. He had to have enough accumulation. This kind of accumulation was not only the accumulation of Sword Dao, but also the accumulation of experience and various kinds of knowledge. Only by accumulating enough in all aspects could he create the best Sword Dao. The countless sword lights and sword Daos in the Sword Dao skywall could become a kind of accumulation for Chu Mu. He locked onto one of the sword lights and carefully comprehended it, feeling the various profoundness within it. Chu Mu's cultivation realm was very high. It was equivalent to using the height of a small dominator realm to comprehend the mysteries of the Sword Dao. In this aspect, he surpassed the other geniuses by countless times. Moreover, his comprehension ability surpassed the 12-star level and was unprecedented since the beginning of time. No one could compare to him. His sword technique realm had even reached the initial stage of the heaven realm, where even plants could be used as swords. With these three factors combined, Chu Mu's comprehension of the Sword Dao heavenly wall was more than 10 times that of other geniuses. Time passed slowly. Chu Mu, who was immersed in comprehending the Sword Dao sky wall, did not realize that the clan points in his immemorial Sword City token were gradually decreasing with the passage of time. Every sword Tao was broad, profound, and incomparably mysterious. Even a great sovereign realm expert had no confidence in comprehending them thoroughly. Chu Mu's goal was not to comprehend every sword Tao thoroughly, because if he did that, he wouldn't be able to do it even if he had 10,000 or even 1,000,000 years. Moreover, his cultivation realm was not high enough. Legend had it that only by reaching the demigod's sovereign realm could one completely comprehend the great Tao. Therefore, Chu Mu's goal was to comprehend as much as possible and use the shortest amount of time to achieve the greatest effect. Moreover, he wanted to comprehend as many sword Taos as possible and absorb the essence within, turning it into his own accumulation. When the time was right, he would digest it in one fell swoop and create his own sword Tao. Some of the sword cultivators that were comprehending the sword Tao skywall with Chu Mu had left, while others came. In short, there were at least 3 or 4 of them. Unknowingly, a month had passed in the blink of an eye. Chu Mu was still sitting in a cross-legged position with his eyes fixed on the sword Tao skywall. He was completely immersed in comprehending. Comprehending was something that consumed one's mind. The mind was limited, which determined the time needed to comprehend. Once one was lost in comprehending and did not know how to withdraw, one's body would be affected and be damaged. However, the higher one's cultivation realm was, the stronger one's mental willpower was, and the stronger one's mind would be. For example, Chu Mu's mental willpower was incomparably powerful. Compared to any Emperor realm expert, it wasn't inferior at all. In fact, it was even stronger. Such a strong mind allowed Chu Mu to comprehend for a longer period of time. For example, those peerless heavenly venerables would have to withdraw from the sword Tao skywall after 1 or 2 months to recover. However, Chu Mu did not need to do that. He could comprehend for half a year or even a year. Currently, Chu Mu was completely immersed in the mysteries of sword Tao within sword Tao heavenly wall. The more he comprehended, the more astonished he was at the mysteries of the various sword Taos contained within sword Tao heavenly wall. He thought to himself that this was truly a treasure brought back by the first immemorial sword sovereign from the depths of the chaotic universe. Thinking of this, an idea unconsciously arose in Chu Mu's heart. One day, he would also travel the chaotic universe and enter the depths to experience the mysteries of the chaotic universe. However, that was a matter for the future. Chu Mu still didn't know when he would be qualified to do that. After all, the chaotic universe was filled with all kinds of dangers. The most important thing now was to comprehend the mysteries of the sword Tao sky wall. He had to do his best to comprehend as much as possible and accumulate as much as possible to strengthen his foundation and potential. Chapter 2192. The chaotic universe, the great chaotic void, was deep and boundless. The origin realm was located in a corner of the chaotic universe. It was a world of its own. Within the origin realm there were many realms, each of which was a world of its own. There was a certain distance between them, and the distance between them was the chaotic void. Within the origin source realm, there was a very strange realm. The realm was completely black, and the light it emitted was also black. The black was very strange and gave people a feeling of evil, as if it had absorbed all the darkness between heaven and earth. What was strange was that lines of gold, silver, red, blue, and other colors were surrounding the huge black domain, as if they were tying it up. Every line looked like a strand of hair from afar, but in fact they were not. Every line was extremely thick, at least 100 meters thick. Among them, they were in the shape of chains, interlocking with each other and emitting astonishing energy fluctuations. This realm that was completely black was called the demon realm. The demon realm was naturally related to the demon race. Not only were they related, but they were closely related. Many years ago, the demon race army set out from the primeval demon realm and attacked the origin source realm, conquering one realm after another to become their stronghold. However, under the counterattack of the various races alliance, they took back one realm after another. However, there was always one realm that was difficult to take back, and that was the demon realm. Of course, this realm was not called the demon realm at that time, but was changed to the demon realm by the demon race. It also became an important stronghold for the demon race to attack the origin source realm. There were various facilities and defenses, making it impossible for the various races to take it back. After the demon race army was defeated, there was still a portion of the demon race left in the demon realm. The experts of the human race and the other races alliance took action and used various means to seal the demon realm, making it impossible for the demon race to enter or leave. They could only be trapped in the demon realm for life. It should be known that the experts from the various clans who had sealed off the demon territory were all demigod sovereigns. They had joined forces to set up layers of seals, and their power was extremely terrifying. It would take at least a few demigod sovereigns from the demon clan to break it. Once a demigod sovereign made a move, it would immediately attract the attention of the other demigod sovereigns. Thus, it was almost impossible for the demigod sovereigns to break through the seal. When the devil race army retreated, the ones left behind in the devil domain were basically the old, weak, sick, and disabled of the devil race. However, the devil domain was, after all, an important stronghold that the devil race had painstakingly built. The devil race was unwilling to let it go. Subsequently, the devil race sent out their armies several times, but all of them were repelled one by one. As time went by, the devil clan in the demon area multiplied, causing the number of the devil clan to gradually increase. The knowledgeable people among the various clans suddenly came up with an idea. They sent the demigod sovereigns to open a hole in the seal and set up various protective measures so that the people of various clans could enter the demon area to hunt the devil clan and gain experience. The various clans in the source realm were the natural enemies of the celestial and devil races, and it was impossible for them to coexist peacefully. Even if the various clans were willing, the celestial and devil races would not allow it. They were bent on occupying the source realm and destroying or enslaving the various clans. Therefore, although there had been peace for millions of years, the various clans were certain that the celestial and devil races would not give up and would definitely make a comeback. Therefore, it was necessary to understand the devil race and the celestial race as much as possible. The best way to do so was to fight and personally fight with the celestial and devil races. At the entrance of the demon area, there was a palace. It was a treasure refined by the demigod sovereigns of various clans. It was specially used to seal the entrance of the demon area and had the ability to detect automatically. If it detected any devil race or celestial race members, they would be killed by the power of the treasure. This palace was called the Demon Suppression Palace. The space-time gate of the Demon Suppression Palace suddenly flickered, and 3 figures appeared. One of them was Li Han from the Prodigy Barracks, the other was Shan Lintao, a 10-star peerless sky pride, and the third was Chu Mu. It had been more than a year since Chu Mu had entered the Prodigy camp. His clan merit points had been used up long ago. It was empty, with not a single point left. His few hundred clan merit points were mainly used on the sword Principal Skywall. He had been constantly comprehending the sword Principal Skywall for more than a year. This allowed Chu Mu's understanding of the sword principle to be deeper and more thorough. His accumulation was also far greater than before. Other than comprehending the sword Principal Skywall, Chu Mu would also cultivate the immemorial sword seal and also cultivate the truth-seeking technique to refine the sword principle origin. Therefore, his cultivation had also risen from early minor sacred master to middle minor sacred master, and his strength had also increased slightly. Other than cultivating, Chu Mu also constantly read the ancient books. The immemorial sword city was one of the 3 major parts of the human race's supreme sword union. It had a long history, and countless ancient books were collected. As a member of the Prodigy Barracks and the most outstanding sky pride in history, Chu Mu naturally had the green light to read the ancient books. In more than a year, Chu Mu had not finished reading all the ancient books collected in the immemorial sword city. In fact, he had only read a small part of them. Even so, it had broadened Chu Mu's horizons and accumulated more knowledge. After entering the prodigy barracks for more than a year, it could be said that Chu Mu had a very obvious change compared to more than a year ago. It was not only in terms of cultivation, not only in terms of strength, but also in other aspects. At this moment, he looked very calm, like a sword hidden in a scabbard, not showing its sharpness. Of course, it was not only Chu Mu who had improved. Li Han and the other Sky Pride's strength had also improved a little. After all, they were talented and had various resources in the prodigy barracks. It would be strange if they did not improve. Chu Mu, who had experienced the benefits of clan merit points, naturally wanted to obtain more clan merit points. However, it was not easy to obtain clan merit points. He did not have the strength to challenge the Sky Prides on the prodigy ranking, so he could only look for missions to complete. However, the clan merit points that could be obtained from most of the missions were too little. He had to complete many missions to accumulate some clan merit points, and it would not be long before they were all used up. At this moment, one of the higher-ups of the immemorial Sword City issued a mission, which was to collect demon blood. The so-called demon blood was the blood of the demon race. The demon race was a second-order life form. They had a unique advantage in terms of physique. In this aspect, the human race, divine race, and even the Vajra race who specialized in physique could not compare. Their strong physique also resulted in the demon race's incomparably strong vitality. Their blood also contained great power and potential. This power could be extracted and refined into elixirs or other uses. In short, it had great value. However, the demon race's blood was not so easy to obtain. Preserving it was a problem because the power contained in it was so strong that ordinary containers could not contain it. In addition, once the demon race knew that the other party's goal was their blood, they would immediately destroy the power contained in the blood, causing it to become ordinary and lose its value. Of course, the powerhouse who issued the mission to collect demon blood also had a corresponding method, which was to use the demon blood pot to store the demon blood. The demon blood pot was a treasure that was specially refined to store demon blood. The mission to collect demon blood and the clan merit points reward were closely related to the amount of demon blood collected. It immediately attracted the attention of many people and made them tempted. Chu Mu, Li Han, and Shen Lintao were the same. They immediately accepted the mission and passed through the gate of time and space, arriving at the demon suppression hall of the demon domain. Without a doubt, the demon domain was the best place to collect demon blood. After showing the immemorial Sword City token, the three of them passed through the demon suppression hall and entered the demon domain through the entrance. The sky of the demon domain was always dark. Countless black clouds seemed to be filled with lead. They were densely packed and incomparably thick. It was as if they could collapse at any time, suppressing the earth and shattering all life on the earth. This kind of thick black clouds made people feel very oppressed. At a glance, the earth appeared very desolate. Compared to the other domains, the sky of the demon domain was black, and the earth was also close to black. It was desolate, just like a remote and barren countryside. In the air, a bleak and desolate aura pervaded. It was as if it was constantly warning Chu Mu and the other two that the Devil region wasn't a safe place. Instead, it was an incomparably dangerous place. Chu Mu, Lin Tao, are we going to move together or separately? Li Han asked. I'm used to moving alone, so I have more freedom. Shen Lintao shrugged his shoulders and faintly glanced at Chu Mu. Chu Mu understood what Shen Lintao meant. When Chu Mu entered the prodigy camp, Shen Lintao happened to be out. By the time he returned, more than a year had passed. Knowing that Chu Mu, the newcomer, was a top 12-star Heaven's Pride, Shen Lintao was curious and unconvinced. Therefore, he wanted to challenge Chu Mu. In the end, Chu Mu had been comprehending the Sword Dao Sky Wall, so the challenge was not successful. Now, the three of them had accepted the same mission. Shen Lintao had a thought to compete with Chu Mu. Although he did not directly say it, the meaning was very obvious. Chu Mu smiled at Shen Lin Tao's silent challenge. His meaning was also very obvious. He accepted it. Li Han naturally also saw it. Immediately he smiled and said, "In that case, why don't the three of us move separately? When the time comes, we'll compete and see who gets more clan points." The three of them were either Heaven's Pride or exceptional Heaven's Pride. They had great confidence in their own strength. Therefore, they wanted to move alone. Of course, confidence was one thing. They would not be arrogant because of this. This was the demon domain, a domain belonging to the devil race. There were many members of the devil race and many experts of the devil race here. Chapter 2193. The dark clouds in the sky seemed to remain unchanged. Chu Mu's body transformed into a sharp sword light that quickly flew under the dark clouds. In his mind, the records of the devil region flashed through his mind. The demon race in the demon area exists in the form of tribes. The three strongest tribes are the tribes established by the three royal tribes of the demon race. The other tribes depend on the three royal tribes. The demon area has been sealed by the demigod sovereigns of the Great Alliance. The demon race cannot enter or leave. At the same time, they have set up a boundary in the demon area. The demon area is divided into the inner demon area and the outer demon area. The inner demon area is where the Great Emperor Realm demon race stays. Once they leave the inner demon area to the outer demon area, their strength will be suppressed to the Great Emperor Realm. The outer demon area is where the demon race under the Great Emperor Realm lives. Undoubtedly, the experts of the various tribes had put in a lot of effort to turn the demon area into a place where the various tribes could train and kill the demon race. The great Tao of the demon area was suppressed. It was impossible for the Dominator Realm experts to appear, let alone the demigod sovereigns. It was already very impressive if one could reach the Great Emperor Realm. Moreover, most of them were first step Great Emperors. Only a few could reach second step Great Emperors. As for third step Great Emperors, there were very few of them. Chu Mu was now in the outer demon area. He could not go to the inner demon area. It would be like throwing a meat bun to a dog. There was no return. Not long after, Chu Mu heard a strange sound. It was a strange yet familiar language. It was strange because Chu Mu could not understand it. It was familiar because it was not the first time he heard it. The demon race's language sounded the same when one did not understand it. It was a lot of gibberish. It seems that I have to learn the language of the various tribes when I go back. Chu Mu thought. A few figures broke through the sky and arrived. Fierce killing intent swept over like a storm. In order to survive, the demon race in the demon area had been fighting for many years. They fought against demonic beasts and other demon races. In addition, they were born with tyrannical fighting talent. Thus, they had developed amazing fighting skills. Another damned human ant has come in. These damned things, how dare they treat us as whetstones? Kill him and let him know the power of our demon race. The three devil clansmen were aggressive, and their killing intent soared to the sky. They hated the various clans that had sealed them in the devil's domain and prevented them from leaving. The aura emanating from the three incoming devils were all at the great sacred rank. But in Chu Mu's eyes, they were like ants. He did not use his sword light. Instead, he used his finger as a sword and gently tapped the air 3 times. Like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, the 3 sword light pierced through the air with extreme speed. Before the 3 demon grand saints could react, the 3 sword light had already pierced their hearts. The power surged up and shattered their demonic souls. The 3 demon clansmen paused in midair and suddenly trembled. Then Chu Mu appeared beside them and took out the demonic blood pot. He activated the demonic blood pot's power, and 3 blood arrows shot out from the holes in their hearts and were sucked into the demonic blood pot. The power contained in the demon blood of the demon clansmen was closely related to their cultivation. For example, the demon blood of a little sacred master was not as good as that of a great sacred master, and the demon blood of a great sacred master was not as good as that of a supreme sacred master. After the demon blood entered the demonic blood pot, it would be purified automatically, and the impurities would be removed. Then it would be purified and fused until it reached the level of a low-level half-step Great Emperor. That's right, the demon blood of a low-level half-step Great Emperor was the standard level for this mission. 1 drop was the standard amount. Of course, if the demon clansmen killed were a mid-level half-step Great Emperor or higher, their demon blood would not be degraded. However, a drop of mid-level half-step Great Emperor's demon blood was obviously more valuable than a drop of low-level half-step Great Emperor's demon blood. Killing the 3 great sacred master demons was just the appetizer. Not long after, Chumu encountered a tribe. There were more than 100 demon clansmen in this tribe. The most powerful tribe leader had the strength of a low-level half-step Great Emperor. Because the demon clansmen were born with strong physiques, they were usually much stronger than humans of the same level. However, Chumu's strength was not something a low-level half-step Great Emperor could compare to. Even an ordinary mid-level half-step Great Emperor might not be a match for him. In just 2 or 3 moves, the tribe leader was killed by Chumu. Chumu also killed all the Saint Venerables of the demon clansmen. As for the demon clansmen below the Saint Venerables, Chumu ignored them. After all, this was the demon domain and not the primal beginning demon domain. If this was the primal beginning demon domain or the other demon clansmen's base camp, as long as they were demon clansmen, they would be killed regardless of their strength. However, the demon clansmen in the demon domain were suppressed by the various clans. The demon clansmen were controlled by the various clans and were used as a training ground for the younger generation of the various clans. If all the demon clansmen were killed, there would be no need to talk about training. It was like going out to sea to fish. If you caught a small fish, you would have to release them. Only then could it form a sustainable cycle of development and not drain the pond to catch all the fish. After Chumu left, the demon clansmen who were not as strong as Saint Venerables were filled with hatred. However, they could not do anything about it. After several thousand li of battle, Chumu defeated as many as 8 tribes. The tribe leaders were only low-level half-step Great Emperors. They were not a match for Chumu at all and were killed directly. Their demon blood was absorbed and refined by the demonic blood pot. Chumu searched for the next tribe and fought with the demon clansmen. Not only could he train himself, but he could also collect demon blood. Demon blood was a good thing that could be exchanged for clan merit points. However, Chumu was not the only one who entered the demon domain. In fact, it was not just the human race. Suddenly, Chumu felt a coldness pervading the air. Looking over, there seemed to be snowflakes dancing in the air, descending from the sky. Each snowflake was formed by sword aura, bringing with it a shocking coldness. When he got closer, Chumu saw 3 snow clan sword cultivators fighting with a dozen demon clansmen. The 3 snow clan sword cultivators were low-level half-step Great Emperors. As for the demon clansmen, only one was a low-level half-step Great Emperor and the others were supreme holy venerables. The 2 sides were almost equal. This had nothing to do with Chumu. When he was about to go around, suddenly a tyrannical chi came from afar. It was extremely fast. With a flash of black light, it arrived at the place where the Snow Clan sword cultivators and the demon clansmen were fighting. The tyrannical chi directly suppressed the 3 Snow Clan sword cultivators, making them unable to move. A medium-level half-step Great Emperor demon. The 3 Snow Clan sword cultivators gathered all their strength. They were astonished. The difference between a low-level half-step Great Emperor and a medium-level half-step Great Emperor was obvious. Not to mention, a medium-level half-step Great Emperor from the Demon Clan was even stronger. Even if the 3 of them used all their strength, they wouldn't be able to defeat him. Without hesitation, the 3 of them immediately used all their strength to retreat. They wanted to escape. However, as soon as they moved, the dozen or so demon clansmen quickly intercepted them, preventing them from leaving. At the same time, a huge black palm struck down from the sky, directly sending the three of them flying. They tumbled a few times in the air, vomiting blood nonstop. That palm hadn't killed the 3 Snow Clan sword cultivators. Instead, it had injured them. They couldn't fight anymore. Take them back. A medium-level half-step Great Emperor demon appeared. He stared at the 3 Snow Clan sword cultivators ferociously, especially the female sword cultivator of the Snow Clan. Her eyes were filled with lust. Yes, leader. It turned out that the medium-level half-step Great Emperor was the leader of a tribe. Seeing that, Chumu couldn't just stand by and watch. There were many smaller tribes in the Origin Realm. Some of them were independent, while others were biased. For example, the Snow Clan mainly practiced swordsmanship. Therefore, the Snow Clan was more inclined towards the Human Clan. To a certain extent, they were dependent on the Human Clan. That alone was enough for Chumu to take action. Besides, this was a medium-level half-step Great Emperor. His demon blood was even more valuable. That was the second reason why Chumu had to take action. The 3 Snow Clan sword cultivators were captured by the demon clansmen. Just as they were about to leave, a cold sword light suddenly streaked across the sky. Under the sword light, several supreme, holy venerables of the demon clan were killed on the spot. Die. The demon race's medium-level, half-step martial emperor was enraged. Unexpectedly, someone dared to attack and kill his clansmen. He roared furiously and raised his huge palm. He threw a palm strike in the direction of the sword light. A huge, pitch-black palm imprint tore through the air, seeming like it was going to collapse space itself. It was extremely powerful. This demon clansman was a beast demon. He was tall and strong like a huge black bear. A sword light arrived and shattered the jet-black palm print. The next sword light arrived and attacked the medium-level half-step Great Emperor of the Demon Clan. After cultivating for more than a year, Chumu hadn't fought with anyone. Now, he was like a dragon returning to the sea. The previous battles were too weak and could only be considered appetizers. Now, a medium-level half-step Great Emperor was enough for Chumu to enjoy himself to the fullest. When the 3 Snow Clan sword cultivators saw the sword light, their eyes twinkled with joy. They had been severely injured and had been captured. They knew their fate would be miserable if they fell into the hands of the demon clansmen, especially the female sword cultivator of the Snow Clan. If their strength hadn't been sealed and their limbs hadn't been bound, they would have already killed themselves. Now, someone had come to save them. They could only hope that this person was strong. In the sky, the 2 figures kept clashing. The sword light flickered and demon chi surged. It was extremely intense. An ordinary medium-level half-step Great Emperor of the Demon Clan was indeed very strong. He could fight against 3 human half-step Great Emperors of the same level. Good. I'll use you to test the power of the Sword Dao Absolute skill I comprehended in the Sword Dao Skywall, thought Chumu. The Sword Dao Skywall contained countless mysteries of the Sword Dao. By comprehending the mysteries of the Sword Dao, one could comprehend the corresponding Sword Dao Absolute skill. Chumu had been comprehending in the Sword Dao Skywall for more than a year and had gained a lot. Chapter 2194. Sharp Golden Sword. It was a simple name, but it was not a simple Sword Dao Absolute skill. It was mysterious and powerful. The Li-perishing sword shot out instantly, turning into a pure golden sword light. It was very dazzling, and no one could look at it directly. The sharpness of the sword was earth-shattering. The demon race expert's expression changed. He could feel a great threat from Chumu's sword. This threat made him feel like his body was about to be penetrated. It was as if nothing in the world could resist the sharpness of this sword. The sharp golden sword was a sword Tao absolute skill based on the law of gold. It was famous for its sharpness. When it reached the pinnacle, it could be said to be indestructible. Of course, Chumu was far from reaching this level. However, it was not difficult for the sharpness to penetrate the defense of the demon race's intermediate half-step Great Emperor. In the past, Chumu had cultivated the law of gold. However, he gave up on it and switched to the Sword Tao essence. Then he refined it into the Sword Tao essence. It had nothing to do with the law of gold. In theory, it was difficult for Chumu to comprehend an absolute skill that was directly related to the law of gold. However, one should not forget that the Sword Tao absolute skill was the Sword Tao first. Chumu was a sword cultivator. He was a sword cultivator who had grasped the Sword Tao essence. Furthermore, he had comprehended the origin of gold, wood, water, fire, earth, space, and time from the world origin of the small world. With such a foundation, it was not difficult to comprehend the sharp golden sword. The golden sword light was extremely condensed. The profoundness of the sharp golden sword lay in the high concentration of energy. It became extremely sharp and could penetrate all targets. The demon race's intermediate half-step Great Emperor's expression changed drastically. He quickly retreated. A pair of jet-black metal gloves appeared on his hands and stacked up to block the attack of the sharp golden sword. A strange and obscure sound was heard. The sharpness of the sharp golden sword did not penetrate the opponent's gloves. It was a demon weapon, an intermediate half-step Great Emperor's demon weapon. It was not to be underestimated. The sharp golden sword light was ineffective, but Chumu wasn't surprised. With a flash of light, the sword transformed into a fiery red color. An incomparably high temperature instantly permeated the air, blasting out like flames, directly blasting towards the devil expert, enveloping his body. The mysteries of the sharp metal sword lay in the extreme condensing and sharpness of the power. And this fiery red sword was the Burning Flame sword, which was also a very common name. Its mysteries lay in the fierce impact and high temperature of the flame, which could melt the target in an instant. The scorching heat and terrifying power caused the demon race expert's expression to change once again. He hurriedly retreated and continuously slapped out with his hands. Black palm prints covered his entire body, tightly protecting him from the scorching heat. The palm print defended against the raging flames. The demon powerhouse seized this opportunity to counterattack. But just as he was about to do so, a deep blue sea appeared in front of him like a wave. This was a water-type sword technique, tidal sword. When the sword was unleashed, the sword chi turned into a tidal wave, wave after wave, unceasing. Actually, tidal sword could only be considered as a part of the water-type sword technique. If it was complete, it would turn into a water elemental sword, encompassing all the mysteries of the great Tao of water. It was indescribable with words, and was far from being comparable to tidal sword. The demon race expert could only give up on counterattacking and once again face the attack of tidal sword. Behind the deep blue tidal sword, a verdant green color suddenly bloomed in front of him. At first, it was very faint, but then, as if it was growing out of the ground, it became luxuriant with branches and leaves. It was as if a towering tree was growing, endlessly growing with tyrannical power. Wood-type sword technique, green wood sword. Then, a yellowish-brown shadow appeared in the sky. It was like a piece of land suppressing down with astonishing power. Thick earth sword, sharp metal sword, raging fire sword, tidal sword, greenwood sword, and thick earth sword. These were the sword techniques that Chumu had comprehended in the Sword Tao Skywall. As for the time and space-related sword techniques, they were too difficult to comprehend. Under the suppression of the thick earth sword, the demon race expert's defense was shaken. After all, it wasn't easy to withstand 5 powerful sword techniques consecutively. Before his eyes, countless sword lights flashed, containing countless changes. It was as if there was no end to them, making it impossible for him to distinguish between what was real and what was fake. Before he could react, the countless sword lights disappeared before his eyes, leaving only one. That one seemed to be incomparably bright, but it was also inconspicuous, giving people a very strange feeling. This sword technique was called 10,000 Forms Unification. After more than a year of cultivation, Chumu didn't give up on the Sunluo sword technique. Therefore, his attainment in the Sunluo sword technique had deepened. The 10,000 things become one sword broke through the defense of the demon race's intermediate half-step great emperor through the gap in the defense. The next sword was like a flowing light that penetrated the defense and hit the body of the demon race expert. The second sword technique followed up immediately. The combo of the Dao-seeking sword technique was executed instantly. Chumu's goal was to kill the other party and collect its devil blood. The devil blood of a middle-class half-step emperor was even more valuable. If the other party realized that something was wrong, it might destroy the power contained in its devil blood. Therefore, Chumu would launch an endless barrage of attacks whenever he got the chance, making the other party tired of dealing with it. The Dao-seeking sword technique had 12 combo moves. Each move was stronger than the previous one. The demon race expert's defense was destroyed before he could reorganize. His body was constantly injured. Murderous chi and killing intent surged violently, condensing in an instant and rushing forward fiercely. The demon race expert's mind trembled, as if he had fallen into a sea of blood. Lifeless sword style. Over the past year, although Chumu had not fought or killed, he had further perfected the lifeless sword style. His cultivation had increased, increasing the power of the lifeless sword style. As the final sword technique, its power was unparalleled. The scarlet sword light pierced through the sky. The terrifying killing intent was earth-shattering. It instantly pierced through the demon race expert's forehead, shattering his demon soul. Then, Chumu's sword pierced through the demon race expert's chest, piercing through his heart. Blood flowed through the heart to the entire body. Therefore, the blood at the heart was the purest. After piercing through the heart, Chumu quickly took out the demon blood pot and absorbed the demon blood of the demon race expert. He is collecting demon blood. That damned human is collecting demon blood. Let's go. The remaining demon race experts were terrified. They were not afraid of death, but they did not want their demon blood to be taken away after they were killed. They knew the purpose of the demon blood being taken away. It was to refine pills, forge weapons, or something else. In short, it was not beneficial to the demon race. Thinking about it, it was fine if they were killed, but their demon blood was being taken away to increase the strength of the enemy. It was a humiliation that they could not accept. However, it was impossible for them to escape. Chumu swung his sword and slashed. That low-class half-step emperor demon was pierced through his forehead by a sword light and then his heart. His demon blood was immediately absorbed. The other extreme sacred venerables were unable to dodge or defend against the sword light and were all killed. Their blood was absorbed by the demonic blood pot. After the demon race experts were killed, their belongings became Chumu's spoils of war. Thank you for saving us. The 3 Snow Tribe sword cultivators quickly saluted Chumu and thanked him gratefully. I was just in time. Chumu smiled and said, You 3 are heavily injured. Hurry up and take some medicinal pills to heal. I'll protect you here. Since he had saved them, he might as well help them to the end. Otherwise, they would be in great danger if they encountered the demon race experts or those with evil intentions. All right, thank you. The 3 swordsmen from Snow Clan were very grateful. They didn't suspect Chumu at all because if Chumu had any ill intentions towards them, he wouldn't need to say so much. He could just attack and kill all 3 of them. The 3 Snow Tribe sword cultivators immediately took out medicinal pills from their spatial rings and ate them. They sat down cross-legged and circulated their martial arts to heal. As soon as they circulated their techniques, cold qi filled the air. It seemed like snowflakes were flying in the air. Chumu took a few glances, and then looked away. He protected the three of them and checked the demonic blood pot in his hand. The demonic blood pot was a treasure, but he was only lending it to them. He could refine it temporarily so that Chumu could check the situation inside. There were drops of blood in the pot. Each drop of blood was refined by the power of the demonic blood pot. They were at least low-level, half-step great sovereigns. There were a total of 10 drops. In addition, there was a drop of mid-level, half-step great sovereign's blood. It was refined from the blood of the mid-level, half-step great sovereign he had just killed. The color of the blood was brighter and fuller. It contained a strong energy fluctuation. A drop of low-class half-step great emperor's demon blood can be exchanged for 1 clan point. A drop of mid-class half-step great emperor's demon blood can be exchanged for 5 clan points. Right now, I have 15 clan points. Chumu thought, killing a low-level half-step great emperor demon and refining his blood into a drop of demonic blood only gives me 1 clan point. It's really hard to earn clan points. However, there were 2 benefits to this mission. First, he could fight against the demon race. It was equivalent to tempering himself and increasing his strength. Second, there was no upper limit to the number of clan points he could earn. Of course, there was no limit to the number of clan points he could earn. However, there was a time limit which was half a year. As long as he had enough strength, he could kill more half-step great emperors of the demon race and collect more demonic blood to exchange for more clan points. Perhaps Chumu's current harvest was only 15 clan points. However, he had just entered the demon domain. It had only been 1 or 2 days. Obtaining 15 clan points in 1 or 2 days was not considered slow. If he could maintain this speed, he might be able to earn hundreds of clan points after leaving the demon domain. Chapter 2195. His sword streaked across the sky, going further and further into the outer demon region. The 3 sword cultivators of the Snow Clan had mostly recovered from their injuries and were able to protect themselves. Chumu parted ways with them as he couldn't protect them forever. The 3 sword cultivators of the Snow Clan knew very well that Chumu wouldn't be able to protect them forever. In the demon area, only the old, weak, sick, and disabled of the demon race army were left behind. With the passage of time, millions of years later, the demon race continued to multiply, forming many tribes. They were like stars in the sky, covering the land of the demon area. When a tribe was exterminated, a new tribe would soon appear. As long as it was not exterminated at once, the demon race tribes would continue to spring up like bamboo shoots after the rain. Of course, in the end, the demon region was just a region. Although it was very big, there were only so many resources and so much land. Many tribes fought for their own development all year round. It could be said that the entire demon region was in a state of war. Firstly, it was because of the competition for resources and land. Secondly, it was because of the nature of the demon race. Murderous aura overflowed and battle cries shook the heavens. Chumu, who was flying through the air, saw 2 tribes fighting. Thus, he retracted his aura and hid himself. The strongest experts of the 2 tribes were high-level half-step great emperors. They were fighting fiercely in the sky. Each of their attacks contained terrifying power. On the ground, there were mid-level half-step great emperors fighting against low-level half-step great emperors. On the ground, there were Saint Venerables fighting against each other. There were at least a few hundred people on each side. As they charged at each other, the battle became extremely intense. This was not a drill, but a real battle of life and death. It was a battle of life and death for the sake of territory and resources. Fierce qi filled the air. Murderous qi filled the air. It was the first time that Chumu, who was hiding, had seen such a large-scale battle. After all, he had experienced many battles, but most of them were one-on-one or one-on-many. At most, there were only a dozen people fighting against each other. He had never seen hundreds of people fighting against hundreds of people. Kill, kill. Chu Mu thought to himself. He stared at the half-step great sovereigns of the devil race. There were more than a dozen low-level half-step great sovereigns, 6 mid-level half-step great sovereigns, and 2 high-level half-step great sovereigns. Chu Mu's eyes did not carry any killing intent. In fact, he was just looking at them casually so as not to attract their attention. He did not have the slightest confidence in fighting against so many devil race experts at the same time. The strength of the 2 high-level demon half-step great emperors was about the same. Their battle was fierce and merciless, but it was hard to determine the winner in a short time. The other low-level demon half-step great emperors had a slight difference in strength, but it wasn't obvious. Therefore, it was hard to determine the winner in a short time. The battle between the thousands of holy venerates was very intense. Die! A giant demon saint stabbed out with his spear, piercing through a saint from an enemy tribe. Before he could pull out his spear, a black blade light slashed at him from the side, cutting him in half. The giant demon saint had just pulled back his blade and was about to attack another saint when a huge axe fell from the sky. It was ferocious, as if it could split a mountain. Fresh blood splattered everywhere, dyeing the ground red, causing Chu Mu to furrow his brows when he saw this. These were all things that could be absorbed and refined into devil blood. As the battle intensified, the half-step martial emperors of the demon race used their secret techniques to increase their strength. There were some differences between the demon clan in the demon area and the demon clan in the primal beginning demon world. That was the difference between the demon army and the demon army in the demon area. After all, the demon army in the demon area was formed by the old, weak, sick, and disabled. Moreover, the demon army was blocked by the experts of the Great Alliance of Clans. Therefore, the resources in the demon area were relatively scarce. Under all kinds of conditions, only the demon clan who had reached the level of half-step Great Emperor had the ability to use the demon army. Moreover, their soldier disintegration ability was a level lower than the demon race of the primal beginning demon domain. For example, the soldier disintegration of a mid-level half-step Great Emperor in the demon domain was almost equivalent to the soldier disintegration of a low-level half-step Great Emperor in the primal beginning demon domain. The half-martial monarchs unleashed their martial monarchs one after another. Their strength improved tremendously, allowing their attacks to be even more powerful. Chu Mu had been observing the battle. He was waiting for the right time to make his move. He wanted to kill all the demon race, especially those half-step Great Emperors. There were more than 20 of them. Once he killed all of them and refined their demon blood, he could earn at least a few dozen clan points. This ambush lasted for more than half a day. Of the 1,000 demon race holy venerates, more than 200 died. The rest were all injured. The intense battle between the demon race half-step greater heavenly martial emperors was still undecided. However, both sides had expended a lot of energy and suffered some injuries, both light and heavy. They seemed to know that if they continued to fight, it would be difficult to determine the victor. They would only increase the number of casualties. "Next time, I will definitely kill you," said the high-level demon race half-step Great Emperor on the left murderously. "Next time, your tribe will be mine," said the high-level demon race half-step Great Emperor on the right with a cold smile. There were many battles like this where the victor was undecided. After they returned, they rested and recuperated before making a comeback. Unfortunately, they did not know that there was a peerless prodigy of the human race lurking in the dark watching them. When the 2 devil clans turned around and left, Chu Mu also followed one of them. When he was close enough, Chu Mu made his move. He activated the immemorial sword seal, secret technique. 3 sword seals lit up on his forehead. The instant the sharpness burst out, Xiao Chun withdrew it and circulated it throughout his body, increasing his strength by 30%. After more than a year, Chu Mu cultivated the 3rd layer of the immemorial sword seal. As for the 4th layer, It would not be so easy unless he entered the burial sword abyss. However, Chu Mu did not have enough clan points. Hence, he did not succeed. However, the third layer of the immemorial sword seal was enough to increase Chu Mu's sharpness by 30%. Following that, Shao Qin activated the heavenly sword talisman. The second layer of the world's end near-at-hand body was executed to the extreme. In a flash, Shao Qin traversed tens of thousands of meters. The sword light carried Shao Qin's figure as it moved through the cracks in the void. It turned into a shadow and assassinated silently. Chu Mu's first target was the high-level demon race half-step Great Emperor. The high-level demon race half-step Great Emperor had gone through an intense battle and used disintegration. His strength had decreased significantly. This was the best time to assassinate him. If Chu Mu missed this opportunity, it would be very difficult for him to kill him. Even though he had used up a lot of his strength and used disintegration, this high-level demon race half-step Great Emperor was still not to be underestimated. The moment Chu Mu's sword was about to pierce him, he reacted and quickly retreated, distancing himself from Chu Mu. The shadow changed and shot out from the cracks in the void. It turned into an aurora and shot through the void. Dao seeking sword art, heaven, and earth thread. White horse swordsmanship. White horse crosses the crack. Although the white horse swordsmanship could not keep up with Shao Qin's pace, it was still an ordinary half-step Great Emperor level swordsmanship. Furthermore, it was a swordsmanship that focused on speed. With the help of Dao-seeking swordsmanship's line of heaven and earth, its speed was even faster. Furthermore, Chu Mu's strength had increased. With the combination of various forces, this sword had surpassed the level of a mid-level half-step Great Emperor. The high-level demon race half-step Great Emperor had used up a lot of his strength. He had less than half of his usual strength. It was difficult for him to dodge Chu Mu's attack. His expression changed drastically, and he could only choose to take it head-on. At the same time, the other demon race half-step Great Emperors finally reacted. Chu Mu knew very well that the white horse swordsmanship focused on speed and not lethality. Therefore, it was not easy to break through the defense of a high-level demon race half-step Great Emperor. In an instant, the sword tip turned blood red. Dense, murderous intent and killing intent surged out and directly bombarded the high-level demon race half-step Great Emperor's mind. It shook him, and he could only see a sea of blood in front of him. With the power of the battle weakened, Chu Mu's execution of disintegration affected all aspects. Otherwise, under normal circumstances, it would be difficult for Chu Mu's killing intent to shake the opponent's mind. Lifeless swordsmanship. When the sword was drawn, there was no life and death. This was a swordsmanship that purely pursued lethality. It was a swordsmanship of the Tao of killing. The weakened high-level demon race, half-step, Great Emperor could not defend himself at all. The sword pierced through his forehead and shattered his demon soul. Immediately, Chu Mu kept his corpse in his spatial ring and turned to kill the other demon race, half-step, Great Emperors. There were 2 mid-level half-step Great Emperors and 8 low-level half-step Great Emperors. Under normal circumstances, Chu Mu would not be their match even if they joined forces. However, in this situation, Chu Mu had used the 3rd level of the immemorial sword seal and the sky sword rune. His strength had increased significantly and he was not afraid at all. He drew his sword. The sharp golden sword, a unique sword skill, broke through the air. The golden sword light with unparalleled sharpness killed 2 low-level half-step Great Emperors in an instant. With another slash, a deep blue world descended and suppressed the demon race half-step Great Emperors. Immediately after, the thick earth sword was used. It was as if the earth was overturned and suppressed the demon race half-step Great Emperors. Raging fire sword, tidal sword, green wood sword. Sword Dao unique skills were used consecutively. One by one, The demon race half-step great emperors were killed on the spot. Soon, only 3 mid-level half-step great emperors were left. They did not care about their own injuries and used the weapon release to increase their strength again. The Tao-seeking sword art was used consecutively. They met force with force and suppressed the demon race half-step great emperors. With the help of the Sky Sword rune, each of Chu Mu's sword attacks carried 50% of the power of the sword shadow attack. It was very powerful and hard to resist. Moreover, it was strengthened by the 3rd level of the immemorial sword seal. It was even more terrifying. Sword Tao unique skills, Tao-seeking sword art, lifeless sword style, and limitless sword art were used alternately. They broke the joint attacks of the 3 mid-level half-step great emperors and killed them one by one. Immediately, Chu Mu took out the demonic blood pot and absorbed the blood of the high-level demon race half-step great emperor, the 3 mid-level half-step great emperors, and the 8 low-level half-step great emperors. Soon, there were 12 drops of bright red demon blood in the demonic blood pot. They were as pure and beautiful as flawless gems. Chapter 2196. After killing a group of demon half-step great emperors and Saint Venerables, he collected and refined their demon blood and quickly chased in another direction. He wanted to kill as many demons as possible before they recovered. Despicable humans, if you have the ability, wait until I recover my strength before we fight again. A low-level demon half-step great emperor roared unwillingly. However, he was answered by Chu Mu's sword light. The chilling sword light instantly killed the demon half-step great emperor. The demon half-step great emperor was an enemy of the human half-step great emperor. It was impossible for them to coexist peacefully. Both sides were doing their best to weaken the enemy's strength as much as possible, especially under such circumstances. Since Chu Mu wanted to seize this opportunity, how could he be willing to let the demon half-step great emperor recover his strength before killing them? Unfortunately, although Chu Mu had killed most of the demon half-step great emperor, only the high-level demon half-step great emperor had escaped. This was because Chu Mu had chased after the other demon half-step great emperor, which gave the demon half-step great emperor some time to recover. The demon half-step great emperor's physique was naturally strong, so they could recover quickly. After collecting the demon blood from 8 low-level half-step great emperors, 3 middle-level half-step great emperors, and the demon Saint Venerables, Yishuan finally obtained 10 drops of low-level half-step great emperor's demon blood and 3 drops of middle-level half-step great emperor's demon blood. The total value was 25 points. Including the demon blood from the other demon half-step great emperor's demon blood, Yishuan obtained a total of 75 clan points. It had been less than 5 days since he entered the demon domain, but he had already obtained 75 clan points. This was indeed a great harvest, which made Chu Mu very satisfied. After the high-level demon half-step great emperor escaped, Chu Mu killed the other demon half-step great emperors and chased after the demon half-step great emperor. It would be better if he could kill the demon half-step great emperor. After all, the demon blood of a high-level demon half-step great emperor was worth 10 clan points. Although the demon half-step great emperor had recovered part of his strength, he was not at his peak. He was also very cunning. He was not willing to fight with Chu Mu. With the demon half-step great emperor's demon half-step great emperor's great emperor, demon half-step great emperor, Chu Mu half-step demon half-step great emperor, a demon half-step great emperor, demon half-step great emperor's demon half-step great emperor's great emperor of demon half-step great emperor's great demon half-step great demon half-step emperor. Humans die. The moment the demon who was in the midst of escaping caught sight of a human blocking his path, he could not help but be enraged. He slashed out with his saber, causing a black saber light that was blazing with demonic flames to tear through the skies. It was a full 100 meters long, and was incomparably domineering with a frightening, killing intent. Petty tricks! The human smiled in disdain. He raised a single palm and pushed it forward. Immediately, a terrifying aura that could topple mountains and overturn seas surged forward. The void seemed to collapse from the power of this palm. A gigantic, transparent palm print appeared. It was neither fast nor slow, but it moved forward like a moving mountain. It was unstoppable. The domineering black blade light was crushed in an instant. The high-level demon, half-step, great sovereign's expression changed drastically. He realized that the opponent's strength was extraordinary. Even if he was at his peak, he might not be able to defeat him. Die. The human clenched his hand into a fist and punched out. The void trembled as an invisible energy wave hit the high-level demon, half-step, Great Emperor's body. The demon, half-step, Great Emperor's defense was shattered, and he was sent flying a few 100 meters away while coughing up blood. Not to mention that you're injured. Even if you're fully recovered, you're still no match for me. The voice of this human was neither loud nor soft. His tone was very calm, yet it contained an incomparably tyrannical aura. His appearance was ordinary, but his eyes seemed to be able to see through time and space, causing one to tremble in fear. The next attack will be to kill you. As soon as he finished speaking, the human's arm did not move. He just loosened his clenched fist and flicked his index finger. A strand of invisible finger energy shot out at an extremely fast speed. A sharp sound was heard, as if it could pierce through one's brain. The high-level demon, half-step, Great Emperor's expression changed drastically. He was unable to dodge or defend himself. His head was hit directly. In the next moment, his head exploded like a watermelon. The terrifying strength of a finger attack was undoubtedly displayed. This scene also happened to fall into the eyes of the pursuing Chumu, causing him to be endlessly shocked. The human had naturally noticed Chumu. A terrifying aura locked onto Chumu. Chumu felt like he was being suppressed. It was as if he was facing a hurricane or a tsunami when he was still weak. It was as if he was going to be destroyed. Terrifying, extremely terrifying. Chumu was 100% sure that even if he used all his skills, he would not be a match for the human. Perhaps the human would not even need 3 attacks to kill him. Fortunately, the human had retracted his aura in an instant. He must have noticed that Chumu was also a human. A mid-level lesser sacred master actually dares to chase after a high-level demon, half-step, Great Emperor. Are you overestimating yourself, or are you confident? The human looked at Chumu with an interested look. He seemed to be talking to himself or asking, "However, your aura is not weak. You're at least a mid-level, half-step Great Emperor. In terms of talent, you should be a peerless genius. However, I have never seen you before. Where are you from?" "Ancient Sword City Prodigy Camp," Chumu replied. He was not afraid of the other party's strength. "So you're from the Ancient Sword City Prodigy Camp. Then, perhaps we will meet again soon," the other party said. He took a step forward and took the spatial ring of the high-level demon, half-step, Great Emperor. He then left in an extremely domineering manner. Chumu thought for a while and came up with a few possible inferences. However, he did not pursue the truth because there was no need to. As for the high-level demon, half-step Great Emperor, whose head was blown to bits, it was a pity that his blood had already spurted out from his neck. There was not much left. His strength had been depleted. Even if Chumu absorbed it, it would be useless. What a pity! Chumu could not help but sigh. After all, it was still 10 clan points. Seems like the mission of collecting demon blood should only belong to the ancient Sword City. Encountering this powerful human was just a small interlude. Chumu did not take it to heart. He quickly left to find more demon, half-step, Great Emperors to kill. Time flew by. It had already been a few months since Chu Mu entered the devil region. There were many demon, half-step great emperors in the demon domain. The number of demon, half-step great emperors and demon, half-step great emperors who had died under his sword added up to several thousand. During this period, Chu Mu had also encountered geniuses from other races and clans. He had even met geniuses from the ancient sword city prodigy camp and the prodigy camp. Every genius had their own pride. They also had different personalities. Sometimes, when they met, some conflicts were inevitable. Fortunately, they were more rational and did not fight to the death. Of course, that was also under the condition that there were not enough benefits to entice them. Otherwise, in the face of great benefits, one's rationality would collapse and impulse would take the upper hand. In the past few months, Chu Mu had constantly fought with the demon, half-step great emperors. He had also encountered some powerful demon, half-step great emperors that required him to use his full strength to defeat. It was an excellent training for him. Originally, the 5 unique sword skills that he had comprehended from the sword principle Skywall could only be considered at the beginner level. However, as he used them again and again, his comprehension of them deepened. His level increased, and his power increased as well. Taking out the devil blood pot, Chu Mu looked it over. Inside the devil blood pot, there was a dense amount of devil blood floating. Drop after drop, each drop had a bright color and was extremely beautiful. It was like a solidified ruby, pure and flawless. A small portion of the blood looked purer and brighter than most of the blood. There are 380 drops of low-class half-step Great Emperor Demon blood, 93 drops of mid-class half-step Great Emperor Demon blood, and 5 drops of high-class half-step Great Emperor Demon blood. Chu Mu calculated in his heart, if I convert it to clan points, it will be 895 points. 895 clan points. This number made Chu Mu somewhat excited. It had exceeded the number of clan points he had obtained previously. If he returned to the immemorial Sword City now and handed over the demon blood, he would be able to obtain these clan points and use them to cultivate. He should be able to cultivate for quite some time. However, there were still more than 2 months before the half-year mission ended. Chu Mu could use these 2 months to hunt the demon race and obtain more demon blood and more clan points. In fact, the demon blood in the demonic blood pot could not be considered as the total amount of demon race's demon blood he had obtained after killing a heavily injured, high-class half-step Great Emperor Demon. It should be some genius or heaven's pride of the immemorial Sword City that was killed by the high-class half-step Great Emperor Demon. In the end, Chu Mu benefited from it. Chu Mu was very clear that there were many powerful demon races experts in the demon domain. The high-class half-step Great Emperor Demon of the demon race alone was enough. At their peak, they could easily kill Chu Mu. Therefore, the fact that Chu Mu was able to obtain 5 drops of high-class half-step Great Emperor Demon blood was largely due to luck. However, good luck was not eternal. Chu Mu did not think that he could rely on luck to run rampant. He had been very cautious, paying attention to all the movements in the surroundings. Once he felt an irresistible danger, he would immediately leave to avoid being killed. All his efforts would be in vain. Chu Mu was working hard. Li Han and Xin Lin Tao were also working hard. With their strength, they were able to kill a lot of demon races experts and obtain a lot of demon blood. Chapter 2197. Subject 2. In tomorrow's battle, I will kill you with my sword. Six Dao's eyes were cold. His murderous intent was as sharp as needles and as cold as ice. He held a soft white cloth in his right hand and placed it on top of the snow-white sword. He slowly wiped the sword, and the cold light reflected in Six Dao's eyes. Looking at the smooth sword, Six Dao was lost in his memories. 3 months ago, on the 30th of May, Six Dao went to the driver's license examination room in Changtai County of Zhangzhou and had a battle of life and death with Subject 2. It was said that countless people had fallen in front of Subject 2, which made him even more ferocious. His name spread far and wide, and people feared him as if he was a ghost. That day the sun was scorching hot and shot out thousands of light beams. They tore through the sky like sharp swords and pierced through the earth. The scorching heat seemed to melt the earth and scorch everything on it. Even though his cultivation level was high, under the scorching sun, Six Paths was still sweating profusely, causing his clothes to stick to his body. However, his eyes were bright and sharp. He was very confident in his own strength because before the battle he had a deep understanding of Subject 2 and had mastered a unique skill that could counter his sword art. For Wheelcar Sword, there were 5 moves in 4 Wheelcar Sword. Each move was deadly and deadly. During the battle, everyone was watching. Facing Kumu, who was powerful and intimidating like a ghost, the dominator of the Six Paths was fully focused. He unleashed all his power and performed the first move of the 4-wheel sedan sword. Reverse the car into the warehouse. With one move, Sword Light surged like a river. It was unstoppable. Subject 2 had no choice but to retreat. The second move, Sidestop. The Sword Light was like a thunderbolt. It instantly blinded Subject 2's eyes, and he didn't dare to face it head-on. The third move, starting from the halfway slope. It was like a carp turning into a dragon. After the carp leaped over the dragon gate, it swooped down and turned into a comet sweeping across the sky. Its power was unstoppable, and it made Subject 2 vomit blood. The fourth sword, Right Angle Turn. The Sword Light refracted and attacked from a blind spot. It was impossible to guard against it. Subject 2, who had already been slaughtered, was hit by the sword again. He was seriously injured and on the verge of dying. The dominator of 6 realms smiled. He had prepared well and was confident. Now he was not injured at all. With 4 consecutive strikes, he had killed Subject 2, who was known for being fierce and powerful. There was still one last strike left in the 4-wheel sword. This strike would definitely take Subject 2's life. Zigzag! Six Paths shouted. He swung his sword light in the shape of Ans. You were careless, ha 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 ha. Subject 2, who was originally seriously injured and on the verge of death, suddenly burst into laughter. An incomparably tyrannical aura erupted like a volcano in an instant, shaking all directions. An aura of supremacy in the heavens, and the earth was endless and continuous. Subject 2 waved his hands, and rays of divine light bloomed. This was a sign that he was about to use his ultimate move. At the same time, he shouted loudly, "We'll pressure!" The Six Paths had underestimated his opponent and was hit by the godly light. He was sent flying and escaped with serious injuries. After 3 months of recuperation and 2 days of hard sword practice, the dominator of 6 realms and Subject 2 would fight again on August 31st. Brothers, lend your power to the dominator of 6 realms for the time being. Kill Subject 2 with your sword and show off your sword skills. Chapter 2198. In a huge tribe, there were many demon, half-step, great emperors gathered together. The leader's aura had reached an astonishing level among half-step great emperors. It was far beyond the level of high-level half-step great emperors and even the level of peak half-step great emperors. He could be said to be invincible among half-step great emperors. In addition to the invincible half-step great emperor of the demon race, there were several peak half-step great emperors and a dozen advanced half-step great emperors. Each of them exuded an astonishing aura. There are people from various races in the origin world who have entered the demon area to hunt us, said an advanced half-step great emperor of the demon race. Damn those ants! How dare they enter the demon area and treat us, the great demon race, as their prey? Another advanced half-step great emperor was furious. As one of the few second-order life forms in the chaotic universe, they were proud from the bottom of their hearts. They felt that they were noble and great, especially when compared to the human race and other races. But now they were confined to the demon area and became the targets of various races. How could they, who felt noble and great, tolerate this? As far as I know, The immemorial Sword City has issued a mission to collect demonic blood. Many of the geniuses from the immemorial Sword City have entered the demon region to kill our clansmen in order to collect the demonic blood. A peak half-step sovereign realm expert said furiously. Sure enough, the other half-step great emperors were enraged. Kill them all. Kill them all. Don't leave a single one alive. They were already furious that they were being hunted down and treated as targets. Now, they were being hunted down to collect their demon blood. Take note, those below the level of half-step Great Emperor are not allowed to leave the tribe. Those of the half-step Great Emperor clan better not act alone, said the invincible half-step Great Emperor of the demon race. The demon race did feel that they were noble and great. However, after being confined to the demon area for so many years, they had already understood the situation. Even if they were unwilling and angry, they could not change the fact. Since that was the case, they could only make good use of their strength. It would be best if they could work together. That way, it would be safer and better to fight back against the enemy. It was undoubtedly a humiliation for the Devil Clan to join hands to fight against a race that they had always looked down upon. If it was the Devil Clan of the primal beginning Devil Realm, most of them would not be willing to do so. However, the Devil Clan of the Devil Area was different. Although they were all Devil Clan, they had lost some of their arrogance because of the constraints and restrictions of the Devil Area. In order to survive, everything could be changed invisibly. The battles between the various tribes in the outer Devil Area had all stopped and entered a temporary peace. The Saint Venerables of the various tribes all stayed in their respective tribes and didn't go out. The half-step Great Emperors of the Devil Race had joined forces to hunt down the invaders. Yes, they weren't willing to be the prey. They also wanted to be the hunter. This was the demon race's counterattack. The invincible half-step Great Emperors of the Devil Race also took action. Their strength was extremely terrifying. Once they encountered them, they would most likely die. After all, only an invincible half-step Great Emperor could contend with such a level of half-step Great Emperor. However, there were very few invincible half-step Great Emperors who had entered the demon area this time. The second level of the skyline body was displayed to the extreme. He didn't hold back at all. In a flash, he crossed a distance of 50,000 meters and flew away rapidly. Chu Mu's expression was solemn because he was locked on by an aura. That aura was extremely overbearing and full of destruction. He had a feeling that he couldn't resist it. He could only run away as fast as he could. Behind him, a black light tore through the sky like a black lightning and chased after him. It was an expert of the Devil Race, a peak half-step Great Emperor of the Devil Race. Chu Mu couldn't fight against a high-level half-step Great Emperor of the Devil Race, let alone a peak half-step Great Emperor who was stronger than a high-level half-step Great Emperor. If Chu Mu hadn't sensed the danger in advance and displayed the second level of the skyline body without hesitation, he would have been killed by such an expert. However, the peak half-step Great Emperor of the Devil Race was determined to kill Chu Mu. As soon as he discovered him, he immediately chased after him. Although speed wasn't his forte, he was still faster than Chu Mu. His aura was locked onto Chu Mu, and he was closing in on him. Two figures broke through the sky like two meteors. One was a sword light, and the other was a black light. The sword light disappeared and reappeared in a flickering manner. Every time it appeared, it would travel 50,000 meters. The black light was extremely overbearing, as if it could shatter all obstacles. It was constantly closing the distance between it and the sword light in front of it. This was the absolute difference in strength. Do I have to display the true mystery of human Tao? Chu Mu thought. Once the true mystery of human Tao was unleashed, his potential would be instantly stimulated. His strength would receive an obvious boost. Similarly, his speed would also receive an obvious boost, becoming faster. When he executed the world's end near at hand technique, the distance he could cover would also increase accordingly. However, once he displayed the true mystery of human Tao, It meant that Chumu wouldn't be able to display it again for at least a month or even longer. It was hard to say what the consequences would be if he encountered any danger. Let's not display it for now. Chumu finally decided. Now, the pursuing devil race expert was still tens of thousands of meters away from him. With his current speed, it wouldn't be easy to cover this distance. In terms of speed, Chumu was far superior to a mid-level half-step Great Emperor, especially after he displayed the second level of the world's end near at hand. Ordinary high-level half-step Great Emperors would find it hard to catch up with him. In addition, he had sensed the danger in advance and turned away without hesitation. Damned human, you're too cunning. The pursuing devil race expert was furious. He was from the giant demon clan and was good at strength but not speed. Moreover, his weapon wasn't a spear. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to chase so hard. Even this devil race expert was somewhat regretful. If he had known this would happen, he would have chosen to use a spear when he was cultivating. Now he could directly throw the spear over tens of thousands of meters away and pierce through his opponent. That way, he wouldn't have to chase so hard. After another period of pursuit, the distance between the devil race expert and Chumu was only about 10,000 meters. At this moment, something unexpected happened. Two figures appeared in front of Chumu. They were two high-level, half-step Great Emperors of the devil race. Chumu wasn't a match for one high-level half-step Great Emperor, let alone two. Moreover, there was a peak half-step Great Emperor chasing after him. It could be said that there was a wolf in front of him and a tiger behind him. He was in danger. Without any hesitation, Chumu displayed the mystery of human Tao. 10% of his profound potential was instantly stimulated and transformed into strength. The strength surged like a tsunami, gushing out from the deepest part of Chumu's body and filling every part of his body. It was like a surging wave, wave after wave, endless and endless. Following that, the immemorial sword imprint secret technique was activated. 3 sword imprints appeared between his eyebrows. A shocking sharpness spread out and filled his entire body. The heavenly sword rune's power was activated. Chumu unsheathed his sword and attacked without hesitation. It was fine if he didn't attack, but once he did, the sword light was like a torrential storm that violently attacked. This was completely due to the usage of the true mystery of human Tao. It instantly ignited 10% of his potential and transformed it into power. The power surged violently and could be said to be endless. This allowed Chumu to completely disregard the energy consumption and use his sword techniques to his heart's content. When the two high-level half-step Great Emperors of the devil race discovered Chumu, they were overjoyed. However, they didn't expect to be greeted by countless sword light. Each sword light was a tyrannical sword light with astonishing power. They were densely packed together, like a torrential storm, like a river with endless waves. The two high-level half-step Great Emperors of the devil race naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for death. They quickly counterattacked. At the same time, Chumu displayed the second level of the world's end near at hand body to the extreme. In an instant, he crossed a distance of 60,000 meters, leaving the half-step Great Emperors of the devil race behind him. Instantaneous movement was faster than before because there was no need to worry about the consumption of strength. Moreover, the display of the mystery of human Tao couldn't be maintained for too long. Otherwise, it would damage one's potential and foundation. Therefore, Chumu had to take advantage of the time when the mystery of human Tao was being displayed to widen the distance between him and the 3 half-step Great Emperors of the devil race, and escape from their pursuit. After a while, the shadows of the 3 half-step Great Emperors of the devil race could no longer be seen behind Chumu. The shorter the duration of the mystery of human Tao, the better. Chumu ended it. After that, his strength began to decline rapidly. There was a feeling of emptiness in his body, which made Chumu a little uncomfortable. However, his strength was still there. He continued to display the second level of the world's end near at hand body, moving 50,000 meters in one go. seeing the human disappear in front of their eyes. The three half-step great emperors of the devil race almost exploded in anger. In terms of strength, each of them was much stronger than the other party. However, the other party's speed was very fast, and his movement skill was very mysterious. It was not something they could compare with. Moreover, the other party had displayed a secret technique that stimulated his own strength to increase his speed. From this point, one could see the difference between the devil race of the devil domain and the devil race of the primal beginning devil domain. The devil race of the devil domain was only the offspring of the old, weak, sick, and disabled of the devil race army. Moreover, they were sealed. They did not obtain the true inheritance of the devil race. The martial Tao of the devil race that they cultivated belonged to the lower level of the devil race. Compared to the inheritance of the primal beginning devil domain, it was like comparing a firefly to the bright moon. The inheritance of martial Tao was very important. Although the basic martial Tao was more general, it was not as good as the advanced martial Tao in terms of the utilization of one's strength. This flaw caused their martial Tao to be weak. Chapter 2199 finally got rid of him. Chu Mu heaved a sigh of relief. This was because he could no longer sense any aura pursuing him, nor did he sense any danger. Just now it was really a close call. However, Chu Mu did not find it strange. Ever since he entered the infernal domain, he had encountered similar dangers several times, but he always managed to avert them. It's about time to leave the infernal domain. Chu Mu silently calculated. The half-year mission was about to end, and it was time to leave. After I return, I can get at least 1,000 clan points. With those clan points, I can properly improve my strength. Whether it was training or doing missions to earn clan points, there was only one ultimate goal, and that was to improve himself in all aspects. After making this decision, Chu Mu quickly flew towards the entrance of the infernal domain. Not long after he flew out, he felt that there was an aura below him that was attracting him. This aura was very mysterious, and it made Chu Mu decide to take a look. This might delay his departure, but Chu Mu would grasp it well. Very quickly, Chu Mu landed. The ground was shattered and collapsed everywhere, emitting an ancient and desolate aura. It could be seen that a great battle had once occurred here. Perhaps it wasn't just one battle, but it should have happened a long time ago. The aura that attracted Chu Mu was indistinct and difficult to capture. Chu Mu calmed down and carefully sensed the location of the aura. He slowly eliminated it and slowly approached it. It's here. Chu Mu looked at the area that he had spent half a day to eliminate. It was about 1,000 meters in radius, and the aura that was attracting him was within this 1,000-meter area. Or perhaps it was hidden underground. Therefore, Chu Mu became a diligent excavator and began to dig the ground. The infernal domain's ground was very hard, especially this kind of ground that had been through many great battles. After the impact of various abilities, it had become even harder. This caused Chu Mu's excavation to be quite a hindrance. However, as Chu Mu dug deeper, the feeling of the aura became clearer and clearer, proving that his direction was correct. After digging for about 100 meters, Chu Mu saw a corner of black. Clear fluctuations of aura were constantly spreading out from that corner of black. This is the aura of origin energy. Chu Mu was surprised and delighted as he stared at the black corner. He never thought that he would find something that emitted the aura of origin energy in the demon domain. One had to know that after the demigod sovereigns of the various races joined forces to seal the devil region, only great emperor realm devils could appear. As for sovereign realm devils, it was impossible for them to appear. Without sovereign realm devils, there would be no source of origin. From the looks of it, this black object emitting the aura of origin energy should have been left behind by the sovereigns of the various races and the sovereigns of the demon race a very, very long time ago. This was the only guess. With a flick of the Li Perishing Sword, he picked up the black object. It was an irregular fragment. When Chu Mu grabbed the fragment, he felt a piercing pain, as if he had been stabbed by a sword. Chu Mu could also feel the sharpness of a sword from this black fragment. Without a doubt, this was a fragment of a sword, a fragment of a sovereign realm sword. In fact, Chu Mu could even determine that this fragment belonged to a sovereign realm devil race sovereign. Chu Mu put away the sword fragment. He planned to take it back and study it carefully. Perhaps he could gain some benefits from it. After sensing for a while and not sensing any other auras, Chu Mu took to the air again and flew in the direction of the demon domain's entrance. Learning from his previous experience, Chu Mu paid attention to the movements below as he flew. Unfortunately, he didn't discover anything by the time he reached the entrance of the demon domain. The entrance of the demon domain was equivalent to the exit of the demon domain. It was covered by the power of the demon suppression hall. If any devil race member approached, they would immediately be killed. It was equivalent to entering a relatively safe area of the demon domain. Chu Mu, you're back too. Chu Mu had just stepped into the range of the demon suppression hall's power when someone called out to him. When he saw that it was Li Han, he smiled and said, "It's about time. I'll be back soon." "Me too. I think Shen Lintao should be back soon." Li Han smiled. Sure enough, Shen Lintao returned not long after. Besides them, the other people who were on the mission to comprehend and collect devil blood had also returned. "This time I'll win for sure." This was the first sentence Shen Lintao said when he returned. He looked very confident and solemn. Clearly, he had collected a lot of devil blood. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so confident. That's not necessarily true. Li Han smiled. Clearly, his harvest was not small either. Only Chu Mu smiled and didn't say anything. "Chu Mu, don't tell me you didn't collect enough devil blood?" Shen Lintao looked at Chu Mu and smiled. "It's all right. There's still some." Chu Mu said, "All right, let's say this first. Since we're going to compete, there has to be a bet. Otherwise, it won't be interesting." Shen Lintao suddenly said, "What bet?" Li Han asked. If they wanted to compete, there had to be a winner and a loser. This was more motivating. He wouldn't object, and neither would Chu Mu. Whoever gets the most devil blood in the end will be called the big brother of the other two. How about it? Shen Lintao asked again. To be honest, Shen Lintao's suggestion really surprised Li Han and Chu Mu. "I have no problem." Li Han reacted quickly and said, "Agreed." Chu Mu also said, calling him Big Brother was just a form of address. It didn't mean anything. "The two of you just wait and see." Shen Lintao laughed. The three entered the demon suppressing hall again. Then they went through the space-time gate of the demon suppressing hall and returned to the ancient sword city before returning to the outstanding talents camp. When they arrived at the mission submission area, aside from Chu Mu's group, there were other outstanding talents waiting to submit their missions. 57 drops of low-grade devil blood and 2 drops of middle-grade devil blood. That's a total of 67 devil blood. Low-grade devil blood meant low-grade, half-step martial emperor demon blood. Mid-grade devil blood meant middle-grade, half-step martial emperor demon blood. This wasn't absolute. It was just a designation for this mission. 130 drops of low-grade devil blood and 3 drops of middle-grade devil blood. That's a total of 145 devil blood. Chu Mu and the other two waited in line, one by one. Soon it was their turn. Li Han was at the front of the line. He was the first to make the exchange. He took out the devil blood pot and handed it to the other party. 365 drops of low-grade devil blood and 23 drops of middle-grade devil blood. The person in charge of the exchange said in surprise. This surprised the others as well. This was the person who had obtained the most devil blood among all the people who came to submit their missions. This meant that, in theory, more than 300 half-step martial emperors of the demon race had died under his sword. This achievement was undoubtedly shocking. Li Han obtained 480 devil blood clan points. This made him happy from the bottom of his heart. This was the most devil blood clan points he had obtained so far. Next, it was Shen Lintao's turn. Shen Lintao was a little surprised when he heard the number of Devil Blood Clan points Li Han had obtained. However, he still looked confident. This meant that he could obtain more Devil Blood Clan points than Li Han. 389 drops of low-grade Devil Blood and 25 drops of middle-grade Devil Blood. The number of Devil Blood Clan points Li Han had obtained was already very shocking. However, Shen Lintao's Devil Blood Clan points Li Han had obtained was even more shocking. Shen Lintao's Devil Blood Clan points Li Han had obtained were 514 points. Li Han was speechless. He had obtained a lot of Devil Blood Clan points. Li Han hadn't expected Shen Lintao to obtain more than him. Then he looked at Chu Mu. Seeing his calm expression, he wondered if Chu Mu had obtained more Devil Blood Clan points Li Han had obtained than him and Shen Lintao. Thinking about it, Li Han felt that it was unlikely. Chu Mu, it's your turn. Shen Lintao felt joy from the bottom of his heart when he obtained more than 500 Devil Blood Clan points. Chu Mu took out the Devil Blood pot and handed it over. The person inspecting the Devil Blood pot was stunned. After a while, he announced, 1,130 drops of low-grade Devil Blood. When this sentence was said, everyone was dumbfounded. They felt as if they had been struck by lightning. Their minds were in a mess, and they could not hear the rest of the words. 1,130 drops of low-grade Devil Blood. This meant that this person had killed 1,130 low-grade Devil Race half-step martial emperors. One had to know that Devil Race half-step martial emperors weren't cabbages or weeds that could be harvested at will. However, if it wasn't the Devil Blood obtained from killing low-grade Devil Race half-step martial emperors, then it was the Devil Blood refined from killing holy venerates. How many holy venerates did Li Han have to kill? 100,000 or more. A killing god, a great killing god. After everyone reacted, they looked at Chu Mu with shock and curiosity, but there was no fear. Chu Mu's Devil Blood pot contained 1,130 drops of low-grade Devil Blood, 86 drops of mid-grade Devil Blood, and 8 drops of high-grade Devil Blood. In total, he could obtain 1,640 clan points. Shen Lintao and Li Han were both stunned. Not only was Li Han's Devil Blood clan points more than them, but it was also much more than the two of them combined. How did he obtain it? Chu Mu was very happy when he saw his immemorial Sword City medallion gain more than 1,600 clan points. If he used these clan points well, it would be enough to raise his strength significantly. Big brother, Li Han called out straightforwardly. He was someone who accepted the bet and accepted the loss. This was his character. Big brother. Shen Lintao wasn't that straightforward. However, he was the one who proposed the bet. Hence, he could only call out like this, even though he wasn't very willing. Brother Li, brother Shen, you don't have to take it seriously. Chu Mu waved his hand. He could see Shen Lintao's resistance. However, to him, it didn't matter whether he was called Big Brother or not. You must accept the loss. Moreover, Big Brother, you have the ability. I am sincerely convinced, Li Han said. Big Brother Chu is too polite. I am ashamed. Shen Lintao cupped his hands and smiled. Although he knew that he was the one who proposed the bet and was unwilling to admit it now, he was still unwilling to call Chu Mu Big Brother. Since Chu Mu said so, he would go with the flow and accept it. Chu Mu didn't care about this. Chapter 2200. It didn't take long for the reward of collecting demon blood to be known by many people. Chu Mu had obtained more than 1,600 clan points, which caused a huge commotion. After all, he had only been in the Heaven's Pride Battalion for a little over a year. Fortunately, Chu Mu wasn't the only one who had obtained more than 1,000 clan points. The person who had obtained the most had even obtained more than 2,000 clan points. The limelight had immediately overshadowed the others, and Chu Mu's limelight had been suppressed. More than 2,000 clan points had been obtained by collecting demon blood. Naturally, it was very shocking. However, this person was a character on the Heavens Pride ranking and possessed great strength. It wasn't strange for him to obtain such a result. With the 1,600 clan points that he had just obtained, Chumu wasn't in a hurry to use them. Instead, he returned to the unique restaurant first. After adjusting his breathing, he took out the black fragment that he had dug out from the ground of the demon domain. It was the fragment of the sword of the demon race's sovereign realm expert. The weapon used by the demon race was called the demon weapon. The refining method of the demon weapon was completely different from the swords of the human race, although there wasn't much difference in appearance. This black fragment contained the aura of origin energy, as well as astonishing sword intent fluctuations. It also contained the dark aura fluctuations that belonged to the demon race. Holding the black fragment, Chumu focused all his attention on it. His spiritual will and thoughts all fell on it. Suddenly, Chumu felt as if his spiritual world had trembled, and a great vibration was transmitted. Following that, his thoughts seemed to be pulled by a powerful and mysterious force, traveling through time and space, returning to the ancient era. There were blue and black colors in the sky, each occupying half of the sky. Demonic chi filled the air like smoke signals. Silhouettes danced in the air, colliding with each other again and again in the air. Every time they collided, there would be shocking energy waves exploding out in all directions. On the ground, a black torrent rushed forward ferociously like a flood. It was the army of the Devil Clan. On the other side, it was the army of the Human Clan and the other races. The two armies collided in an instant. Murderous intent filled the air, and the killing intent was earth-shattering. Chumu watched as if he was an outsider. He quickly reacted. This should be the Devil Domain from many years ago. However, at that time, it had not yet become a Devil Domain. It was just that the army of the Devil race had already invaded and attempted to occupy this place. The armies and experts of the various races were currently engaged in an intense battle with the Devil race. This was a rare opportunity. Chumu abandoned all distracting thoughts and focused on reading. Alim Chumu was shocked by the battle between the two legions. Compared to the battle between hundreds of demons that he had seen in Demon Realm, this battle was thousands of times fiercer. It was like comparing a firefly with the scorching sun. It was Chumu's first time seeing such a large-scale battle. Although it wasn't real, Chumu could still feel the shocking killing intent when he was in the middle of it. After watching for a while, he gained a deeper understanding of this kind of large-scale battle between races. It was so cruel and so tragic. It was like a meat grinder wantonly mincing flesh and seizing life. In this kind of battle, no matter how strong one was, one could be killed if one was not careful. Immediately, the battle on the ground belonged to those below the Great Emperor Realm. The battle in the sky belonged to the Great Emperor Realm and the Dominator Realm. Chumu watched one by one, watching every battle clearly. This was an extremely rare experience. It was as if he had truly traveled back in time to the Great War of ancient times. To Chumu, being able to watch the fights between experts at a close distance was an exceptional opportunity to strengthen himself. Different cultivators had different cultivation methods. Even if they practiced the same cultivation method and the same martial arts, there would be some differences in the way they displayed it, the level of comprehension, the strength of one's combat talent, and so on all affected the cultivator's body in an invisible but very obvious way. Cultivating behind closed doors was ultimately limited. Only by going out, seeing more, and experiencing more could one absorb the essence of what others had learned and integrate it into one's own body, perfecting oneself. The battle was incomparably intense. The Great Emperor Realm experts' attacks were shocking. Chumu's gaze fell on a Great Emperor Realm sword cultivator of the human race. He saw that the Great Emperor Realm sword cultivator had activated his own strength. His sword intent soared into the sky and was incomparably sharp. Immediately, chains as thick as an arm drilled out from the void behind him. They swayed like seaweed and emitted a shocking aura. the aura of the great Tao. Although Chu Mu was only a projection of his consciousness, he could still feel the aura within. If he was only an ordinary saint venerable or half-step great emperor, he probably wouldn't know what those chains were. However, Chu Mu wasn't an ordinary saint venerable. He was a saint venerable who possessed sword principle origin. Sword principle origin was a power that only sword principle dominator could possess. Origin energy also belonged to the category of great Tao power. However, it belonged to the category of great Tao power. The great Tao mastered by the great Emperor realm experts belonged to the category of great Tao power. Chu Mu, who possessed sword principle origin, could naturally clearly feel the aura emitted by those chains. It was the aura of the great Tao. In other words, those chains were a manifestation of the great Tao. There were 3 chains, each with different colors and different auras. This meant that the great Emperor realm sword cultivator of the human race had mastered 3 types of great Tao. His opponent was also a great emperor of the demon race. He was surrounded by demonic chi and demonic flames. His aura was ferocious and earth-shattering. The great Emperor realm sword cultivator of the human race raised his sword and slashed out instantly. Although it looked ordinary, it actually contained shocking power. This was because part of the power of the 3 great Tao behind him had been injected into it. The sword slashed towards the great emperor of the demon race. After watching for a while, Chu Mu had a clearer understanding of the power of a great emperor realm expert. Previously, when he was brought to the Chu sect by Chu Shui and encountered the great emperor of the demon race, Chu Shui did not activate the power of the great Tao. Perhaps the situation had changed too quickly for Chu Shui to react in time. After all, when Chu Mu was watching the battle just now, the great Emperor realm sword cultivator of the human race also took a little time to activate the power of the 3 great Tao. In reality, Chu Mu was wrong. Chu Shui was only a first-step great emperor. No matter how powerful a first-step great emperor was, it was difficult to activate the great Tao's power. Only second-step great emperors could barely activate the great Tao's power. They needed a bit of time to accumulate power. Only third-step great emperors could freely activate the great Tao's power they grasped. As for third-step great emperors, only peak third-step great emperors could instantly activate the great Tao's power. Whether the power of the great Tao was activated or not had an obvious effect on a great emperor. It was like using a secret technique. It could obviously increase one's strength. This kind of war between races not only concerned the life and death of an individual, but also the rise and fall of a race. There was no room for hesitation. They had to use as much power as they could. If they didn't have enough, they had to use more power than they could. The great emperors naturally wouldn't hold back. In the sky, there were chains as thick as an arm and even as thick as a leg. Those were the great Tao of the great emperors. Of course, the demon clan also possessed the power of the great path. However, the form of their great path power was different from that of the human clan. It was not in the form of a chain. Instead, it was attached to their own devil flame and burned with the devil flame. The devil flame was similar to the manifestation of the great path power. It was the power of the demon clan's strong physique. Of course, the devil flame of the demon clan below the great emperor realm could not be compared with the great path power. Chu Mu watched every battle carefully. After a period of time, he had basically seen the battle between the great emperors and memorized it in his mind. Soon after, he looked up at the sky. That was a battle between sovereign realm experts. Chu Mu didn't know how long he could stay here. Therefore, he could only watch roughly and memorize it in his mind. He would slowly and carefully comprehend it later. The battle between sovereign realm experts was many times more intense than the battle between great emperors. It could be said that if the battle between great emperors was a battle between ordinary experts, then the battle between sovereign realm experts was a battle between monsters. The first battle that Chu Mu watched was the battle between a sword sovereign of the human race and a sword sovereign of the demon race. He had deliberately chosen to watch this battle. After all, he was a sword cultivator and had an innate preference for sword Dao. Moreover, sword Dao was more direct and helpful to him. Relatively speaking, Chu Mu was more interested in the sword Dao of the demon race sovereign. The martial arts of the demon race and the martial arts of the human race had always been different. Chu Mu's understanding was that the martial arts of the demon race were often more direct and were known for their destructive power. The sword Dao of the demon race should be biased towards this aspect. On the other hand, the martial arts of the human race were more diverse. It was hard to say who was superior, but in terms of power, the devil race's martial arts were often superior. This was because the meaning of the devil race's martial arts was to fight, kill, destroy, and destroy. It was more thorough. Since Chu Mu came into contact with the demon race in the slaughter domain, he was very interested in the martial arts of the demon race. However, it was a pity that the martial arts of the demon race were only suitable for the demon race. Even if non-demons obtained the martial arts of the demon race, they wouldn't be able to cultivate it. This was determined long ago. In addition to the martial arts of the demon race, Chu Mu was also very interested in the martial arts of the divine race. Similarly, he couldn't cultivate it. Just like the martial arts of the demon race, it was innately determined. However, being unable to cultivate it didn't mean that Chu Mu couldn't watch it. Perhaps he could comprehend something from it. Chapter 2201. Up in the sky, the sword dominator of the human race drew his sword. The essence that he had mastered was the essence of metal. Instantly, it was activated and turned into a sheet of golden light that floated above his head. An astonishing sharpness emanated from it and swept out in all directions. The sharpness of the origin source of gold was incomparably terrifying, capable of cutting and piercing through everything with extreme sharpness. The sword dominator of the human race slashed out with his sword. The power of the origin source of gold fused into his sword, turning it into a pure golden sword light that pierced through the air. Soundlessly, the void was sliced apart like a thin sheet of paper. This sword strike vividly demonstrated sharpness and sharpness, making Chu Mu feel as if he had comprehended something. However, upon careful thought, he could not grasp anything. Nevertheless, this scene was firmly engraved in his mind for future comprehension. Facing the sword dominator of the human race's incomparably sharp sword strike, the sword dominator of the demon race showed no intention of dodging. His body blazed with demonic flames that were incomparably dense, exuding a unique and domineering aura that was filled with darkness. The intensity of this aura was not the slightest bit inferior to the origin source of gold. Moreover, in addition to the domineering aura of the demonic flames, it also contained another kind of aura, the aura of a thunderbolt. However, this was not an ordinary thunderbolt, but a thunderbolt that contained the power of the demonic flames. The demonic lightning was the power that the sword dominator of the demon race had mastered. Because of its compound nature, it was much more powerful than the ordinary origin source of gold. The sword dominator of the demon race raised his sword light and slashed down again. The black sword light, entwined with countless pitch-black thunderbolts, pierced through the air. An incomparably domineering aura spread out, surging in all directions. Wherever the terrifying destructive power passed, the void was not sliced apart, but directly destroyed, leaving a black ravine in its wake. When the two sword lights collided, the golden sword light paused for a moment before being shattered by the black demonic lightning sword light. The black demonic lightning sword light continued on with an irresistible force towards the sword dominator of the human race. At the same level, it was usually the demons who were more powerful. The sword dominator's expression remained unchanged as he struck out with his sword once more. Golden sword lights tore through the air and scattered the black sword lights of demonic lightning. Then his figure flickered as he transformed into numerous figures that charged at the sword dominator from all directions. The demonic flames around the sword dominator's body burned even more fiercely. Black arcs of lightning danced around him as he swung his giant sword. unleashing terrifying sword lights that transformed into a circular arc that swept out in all directions. Before long, two more rulers approached and joined forces with the sword god of the human race to resist the sword god of the demon race. The battle was abnormally intense. With the three of them working together, the devil sword dominator was slowly being suppressed. Next, the sword Tao sovereign unleashed his weapon-dispelling secret art. Under the weapon-dispelling secret art, the sword Tao sovereign transformed into an even larger sword with astonishing power. It actually suppressed the three sovereigns. The three sovereigns used their secret arts to increase their strength and reverse the situation. Chu Mu was completely focused on this battle. Of the three rulers, one was the sword dominator of the human race, one was the Vajra ruler, and one was the ruler of the soldier race. Although the three rulers worked together to suppress the sword dominator of the demon race, defeating and killing him was extremely difficult. In the end, both sides had sustained significant injuries. Celestial Army. The soldier race dominator burned everything he had and transformed into a saber. This saber seemed to descend from the heavens and slash down. It was the famous Celestial Army. The Celestial Army that the soldier race dominator had transformed into possessed unparalleled might and was inconceivably powerful. It shattered the sword dominator of the demon race's giant sword with a single strike. The sword dominator of the human race and the Vajra race also unleashed their most powerful attacks, striking the sword dominator of the demon race. With his demon weapon shattered, the sword dominator of the demon race was clearly weakened. He was unable to resist and was killed. After killing the sword dominator of the demon race, the human race's sword dominator was heavily injured. The Vajra race dominator's injuries were not light either. The soldier race dominator had paid a heavy price after transforming into a celestial army. This bitter battle left Chu Mu in an indescribable shock. It took him a long time to regain his composure. After a long while, Chu Mu finally calmed himself down and looked at the other dominators fighting. However, the scene just now had already been firmly imprinted in his mind, as if it was branded into his mind. Battle after battle, blood and flames intertwined. Demons died, as did experts from other races. It was like the underworld of Azura. Chu Mu did not know how long this battle lasted, because he could not feel the passage of time here. One day he suddenly woke up and his consciousness returned to his body. Chu Mu suddenly had a feeling as if countless years had passed, causing him to be absent-minded for a moment. It was hard for him to get used to it. It took him a while before he completely woke up. However, the scenes he had seen before were completely imprinted in his mind. They were extremely clear. As long as he tried to recall them, he would feel as if he had been there. After checking the time, Chu Mu was shocked. Half a year had passed. In other words, he had spent half a year comprehending the demon's sword fragment. No wonder, the higher the cultivation of an expert, the longer the time needed for each seclusion. Although half a year had passed, Chu Mu felt that it was not a short time at all. However, he had gained a lot. All sorts of things had accumulated in his mind. He needed to spend time sorting them out. With a clear mind, Chu Mu did not leave the unique restaurant. He concentrated on comprehending everything in his mind. As for the demon sword fragment, after he comprehended it, it lost all its power and became ordinary. It was no longer of any use. The battle between the armies of different races, the battle between great emperors, and the battle between sovereign realm experts. The sword Tao of the human race, the martial Tao of the Vajra race, the martial Tao of the soldier race, the martial Tao of the beastmen race, the sword Tao of the other small races, the martial Tao of the demon race, and so on. All of them flowed through Chu Mu's mind, and he continued to comprehend them. Chu Mu's brain was like the most precise and high-speed computer, processing all information. His perception was unparalleled, and he could reorganize the processed information, extracting the parts that were useful to him and discarding the useless parts. Chu Mu was like a seedling that was growing. He was constantly absorbing the nutrients that were useful to him. He was constantly accumulating and preparing himself for growth. The sword Tao of the human race's sovereign realm gave Chu Mu a deeper understanding. The sword Tao of the devil race's sovereign realm made Chu Mu realize the extremity of the sword Tao. In addition, there were various martial arts that further enriched Chu Mu's knowledge. As Chu Mu accumulated more and more, his understanding of the sword Tao also deepened. His swordsmanship realm was slowly improving. His cultivation base was also improving bit by bit with the passage of time. When Chu Mu woke up, another half a year had passed. In other words, Chu Mu had returned to the unique tower of the prodigy camp and comprehended the sword Tao for a year. In this year, his cultivation base had unknowingly increased from mid-minor sacred master to high-minor sacred master. His swordsmanship realm had also improved, getting closer to mid-heaven realm. His strength had also increased. However, the most important thing was his accumulation. Compared to before, it was several times more profound. His understanding of the sword Tao had also deepened. Let's go and comprehend the sword Tao sky wall. After that, I can start to create my own sword Tao. Chu Mu thought. Finally, the time to create his own sword Tao was coming. He had been working hard for this goal. Today, thanks to the demon's sword fragment, he was finally going to complete the first step of accumulation. However, Chu Mu felt that his accumulation was still somewhat insufficient. He wanted to comprehend the sword Tao skywall and comprehend a deeper mystery of the sword Tao. In this way, he would be fully prepared to create his own sword Tao. Comprehending the sword Tao skywall required 1 clan point per day. Chu Mu now had more than 1,600 clan points, which meant that he could comprehend it for more than 1,600 days, which was more than 4 years. That was enough time for Chu Mu to gain a deeper understanding of the sword Tao. He came to the front of the sword Tao skywall. "Big brother, you're here too." Li Han saw Chu Mu and greeted him naturally. Chu Mu nodded and sat down cross-legged. The two of them did not speak anymore. They stared at the sword Tao skywall and began to comprehend it. Time passed unknowingly as they continued to comprehend. A month later, Li Han stood up, glanced at Chu Mu, and quickly left. The second month passed, and Chu Mu was still in the midst of comprehending. The third month passed, and Chu Mu was still in the midst of comprehending. 5 months. This time, Chu Mu comprehended the sword Tao skywall for a total of 5 months before leaving. After 5 months of continuous comprehension, Chu Mu looked a little haggard. However, he was very happy because the comprehension this time was much more than what he had comprehended in the past year. Perhaps this was because Chu Mu's accumulation was more profound. After returning to the unique restaurant, Chu Mu began to adjust his breathing. After 5 months of continuous comprehension, his mind was mostly exhausted and he needed to recover first. After his mind was fully recovered, he adjusted his essence, energy, and spirit to reach his peak state. Chu Mu began a deep level of closed-door cultivation. The purpose of this closed-door cultivation was to create his own sword Tao. This time, the self-created sword Tao was no small matter. It was to create a perfect sword Tao that had infinite potential and was very compatible with himself. It was a sword Tao that could allow him to display his strength and advantages to the extreme. When Chu Mu closed his eyes and calmed his mind, his essence, energy, and spirit seemed to have condensed into one. The truth-seeking technique naturally circulated, and he began to enter a state of comprehension. Slowly, he entered a deeper level of comprehension. Unknowingly, countless martial arts, mysteries flowed through his mind. The essence of those mysteries was incomparably clear in Chu Mu's mind. Chapter 2202. No one knew how long they had been cultivating. In places like the Genius Camp and the Heaven's Pride Camp, the task of the geniuses and Heaven's Prides was to cultivate, and cultivate. This kind of cultivation did not only refer to the cultivation of cultivation base, but also the cultivation of martial arts and other aspects of cultivation. Anything that could improve one's ability was included in the list of cultivation. Therefore, there were very few geniuses or heaven's prides who would visit other geniuses or heaven's prides in the genius camp and the heaven's pride camp. Because time was of the essence, unless there was an important matter, everyone would seize every minute and every opportunity to improve themselves. As soon as Chumu returned to the unique restaurant, he went into seclusion for a year. After that, he went straight to the Sword Tao Heavenly Wall to comprehend for 5 months. After that, he returned to the unique restaurant to continue his seclusion. This was a very common phenomenon in the Heaven's Pride camp. Therefore, no one paid special attention to him. Those who paid attention to Chumu should be the higher-ups of the ancient Sword City. After all, Chumu was a peerless Heaven's Prides. His growth was related to the entire human race. They had to pay attention to him at all times. Inside the unique restaurant, there was astonishing sword chi everywhere. The sword chi was extremely sharp and could cut through everything. It was abnormally terrifying. Each sword chi was emitted from Chumu's body. Chumu himself was completely unaware that each sword chi contained a unique mystery. These sword chi were unconsciously emitted by Chumu when he was comprehending his various accumulations. They contain the essence and mystery of those martial arts. At this time, if someone were to observe Chumu, they would certainly gain a lot. What was a sword? What was a sword skill? What was a sword Tao? One question after another appeared in Chumu's mind. The sword was a weapon. It was a lethal weapon. It was an extension of the arm. It could better kill the enemy and cause deeper and more thorough damage to things. Sword skill was a skill of using the sword, but it was not just a skill. If it was purely a skill of using the sword, then it would be a sword technique. Sword skill, using the sword as a skill, using the sword to control one's own strength and even the power of heaven and earth to form a powerful attack with various effects, was a sword skill. The way of the sword was the way of the sword. When one had a sufficient connection with the sword would become an inseparable part of one's body. When one's swordsmanship reached a certain level, it would give birth to a Tao. Tao was mysterious, natural, and mysterious. Tao was heaven and earth, as well as the universe. The Tao existed in all things and all things. Sword Tao was one of the great Taos of heaven and earth. It was also one of the top great Taos. What Chumu didn't know was that his purpose was to create a sword technique that was most suitable for himself. However, he didn't expect that as he comprehended it, he began to lose his subjective control and gradually exceeded his expectations. He went from creating his own sword technique to creating his own sword principle. Creating one's own sword Tao was a feat that Chumu had never dared to imagine before. In the past, the so-called sword Tao in the ancient sword continent, ancient god world, deep blue world, and other places were actually incomplete sword Taos. In a sense, they couldn't even be considered as true sword Taos. This was also something that Chumu had only comprehended after his realm had constantly improved. Therefore, his goal was to create a perfect sword technique that was most suitable for himself. After that, he could slowly improve it to the level of Tao and become a true sword Tao. However, this time he had accumulated a lot of experience. He had comprehended the demon sword fragment, witnessed the great battle of countless ancient experts, and comprehended the sword Tao Skywall. This was a supreme treasure brought back from the depths of the chaotic universe by the first primordial sword lord. His realm was also very profound. With all these factors combined, Chumu's original intention of creating his own sword technique gradually broke away from the level of sword technique and improved it to the level of Tao. Although this was unexpected, it was a welcome change. Chumu immediately accepted it and became more focused. The martial Tao of the human race, the martial Tao of the Vajra race, the martial Tao of the soldier race, the martial Tao of the beastmen race, the sword Tao of the snow race, the martial Tao of the volcano race, the martial Tao of the demon race, the martial Tao of the divine race, the Tao of the power of heaven and earth, the power of metal, the Tao of wood, the Tao of water, the Tao of fire, the Tao of earth, the Tao of wind, the Tao of thunder, the Tao of ice, the Tao of light, the Tao of darkness, the Tao of space, the Tao of time. There were countless Taos in the universe. A grain of sand was Tao, a blade of grass was Tao, a leaf was Tao, a drop of water was Tao, and even a wisp of qi was Tao. Tao was everywhere and all-encompassing. Suddenly, a kind of enlightenment emerged from the depths of Chu Mu's mind. It was like a dot of light that gradually lit up. As the light lit up, Chu Mu's enlightenment also increased. There are endless mysteries in the chaotic universe. I want to create my own sword Tao. With the chaotic universe as my goal, I want to create the most perfect and powerful sword Tao. This sword Tao must include the mysteries of the Tao of the universe. Chu Mu thought to himself, and a surge of ambition emerged. The unexpected change caused Chu Mu's mentality to change along with it. His goal also changed. Originally, he just wanted to create a sword technique with infinite potential that was compatible with him. Now, it became to create the strongest sword Tao that was suitable for him. The origin of sword Tao in the center of the spiritual world seemed to have sensed Chu Mu's ambition and began to rotate automatically. Every time it rotated, it would emit a mysterious aura. The aura was full of sharpness and contained endless changes. Chu Mu was a sword cultivator who focused on the sword Tao. His origin was the origin of sword Tao, but it also contained a part of the origin of the world. When the world evolved to the extreme, it would become a domain. If it continued to evolve, it would have some of the mysteries of the chaotic universe. In theory, the world and the universe were of the same nature. The only difference was in size, height, and depth. This difference was both invisible and visible. Chu Mu's sword Tao origin belonged to the sword Tao origin of the world. It was the embryonic form of the sword Tao origin of the universe. It was because of this that his self-created sword Tao changed and became a self-created sword Tao. Of course, in addition to the uniqueness of his sword Tao origin, it also benefited from Chu Mu's own profound accumulation. The natural operation of the sword Tao origin further deepened Chu Mu's understanding. His mind seemed to have become clearer, and his thoughts about the sword Tao that he wanted to create became clearer. What kind of sword Tao was the strongest sword Tao? Chu Mu did not have a clear concept of this kind of thing. In fact, even those giants could not explain it in words. It was very mysterious, and it was a mystery that could only be understood and not explained in words. 10,000 people had 10,000 ideas, and 1,000,000 people had 1,000,000 understandings. What was the strongest? It was suitable for oneself to be able to completely exert all one's advantages and even exceed one's limits. It was able to completely cover up or even ignore one's disadvantages. It was able to surpass everything else. There were countless mysteries in the universe. Although Chu Mu had comprehended a lot and had accumulated a lot, compared to the whole universe, it was insignificant like a drop in the ocean. Chu Mu knew very well that with his current ability, it was impossible to comprehend many mysteries of the universe. Even if he really became a Dominator realm expert, he would not be able to do so. Perhaps it was only possible when he became a demigod sovereign. In fact, even demigod sovereigns did not fully comprehend the mysteries of the whole universe. It could only be said that they comprehended more than others. However, the more one knew, the more one understood. The more one did not know, the more one would have the desire to comprehend further. This desire drove many demigod sovereigns to leave and go deep into the universe to understand more mysteries. For those demigod sovereigns, the survival of their race was not important. What was important was the mysteries of the universe. On one hand, exploring the universe was a kind of pleasure, supreme pleasure. On the other hand, in the process of exploring the universe's mysteries, they would improve. Demigod sovereigns could be said to be a limit. However, they wanted to go higher and break this limit. There was nothing more attractive than this. Of course, there were still some demigod sovereigns who resisted the impulse and desire in their hearts and stayed in their race. This was because they knew that their race was the foundation. If no one took care of it, their race would be enslaved and destroyed by their enemies. They would become rootless duckweeds. Because of this, there would not be so few demigod sovereigns in each race. Creating my own sword principle still requires a way to apply it. Chu Mu thought to himself, he could not just create a framework. That would not be of any help to his strength improvement. What he needed was not an empty framework, but a real sword principle. If there was a sword principle, there must be a matching sword technique. Otherwise, it would be a theory. How could a theory be applied? However, there were too many ideas in Chu Mu's mind. It would not be easy to convert them into a sword technique. He had to find a point of convergence, a starting point, a sword principle, and a sword technique. Since it was a sword technique, it must have infinite potential. Naturally, it would not be limited to a single move. Or perhaps it would reach the pinnacle after a single move. The first move was often a foundation. However, Chu Mu could not deliberately lower his standards for the sake of a foundation so that he could continue to improve in the future. He was very clear that with his current accumulation, even if he had accidentally comprehended the sword Dao, the sword Dao wasn't complete. It should be said that it was only an embryonic form of the sword Dao. The sword techniques under the sword Dao would probably only be able to create the first move. For this move, Chu Mu had to make it perfect without losing its potential. Without a doubt, it would be very difficult. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. Chu Mu had sorted out his thoughts and decided on the first move of the sword technique that he wanted to create. Then he would really create it. Chapter 2203 Immemorial Sword City's Prodigy Barracks welcomed a group of guests. Is this the Immemorial Sword City's Prodigy Barracks? It doesn't look any different from our Heaven Martial Battle City's Prodigy Barracks. One of them looked around and said, the Heaven Martial Battle City and the Myriad Sects Dao City were built after the ancient Sword City. In some aspects, they have the shadow of the ancient Sword City. The Prodigy's battalion is similar, said a genius from the ancient Sword City. That's not important. What's important is that in your immemorial Sword City's Prodigy Barracks, who can fight against Brother Wu? The second prodigy from Heaven Martial Battle City said. As for the third prodigy, who was called Brother Wu, he didn't say anything. This time, there were a total of 3 people from Heaven Martial Battle City. They were all from Heaven Martial Battle City's Prodigy Barracks. 2 of them were prodigies, and 1 was a peerless prodigy. Their purpose for coming here was very simple, which was to exchange pointers. In other words, it was a challenge. The higher-ups had already informed them about this kind of challenge. It was a normal exchange between the Sword Union's Prodigy Barracks. However, it was also related to the higher-ups' face and the glory of the Prodigy Barracks. Let me show you around the Prodigy Barracks first. The prodigy from Immemorial Sword City's Prodigy Barracks said, no need to go through so much trouble. It's all the same. There's nothing to see. Let's go to the Sword Hall. The prodigy from Heaven Martial Battle City said. He couldn't wait to show off. After a while, everyone arrived at the Straight Sword Hall. There were already people waiting in the Sword Hall. After all, the prodigies from Heaven Martial Battle City had come here to fight. Everything else was meaningless. I'll go first. My name is Li Lin. I'm an 8-star Great Sage Master. Who wants to fight with me? One of the 3 prodigies from Heaven Martial Battle City jumped onto the stage and said after looking around. He didn't announce his talent and cultivation to show off because there was nothing to show off. His purpose was very obvious. He wanted to put an invisible restriction on the immemorial Sword City's Prodigy Barracks. For example, if the person who fought against him was more talented or had a higher cultivation level than him, but was defeated in the end, it would undoubtedly boost his prestige. On the other hand, if he defeated his opponent, it wouldn't count because his opponent was more talented or had a higher cultivation level than him. In order to truly defeat him and make him lose for no reason, It would have to be someone whose talent and cultivation did not surpass his. Everyone understood this point. Immediately, someone jumped into the ring. My name is Yang Rui. I'm an 8-star talent. I'm a great holy master. I'll fight you. The same talent, the same cultivation, the starting point was the same. Yang Rui was a sword cultivator, but Li Lin was not. Li Lin punched out, and the fist energy tore through the air with astonishing power. It was extremely tyrannical and contained an incomparably blazing fluctuation. It was as if the power of a volcano had erupted in an instant. He specialized in the law of fire. Yang Rui's sword was like its name, unparalleled in sharpness. What he primarily cultivated was also the power of metal elemental laws. The golden sword light tore through the air and collided with the opponent's fist energy. When the fist energy was sliced apart, the golden sword light was also shattered. Both of them had the same level of talent, and their cultivation was also at the same level, so the power they could unleash was about the same. Victory or defeat would depend on one's combat experience, combat skills, and cultivation method. After all, an 8-star talent was an overall evaluation, and the overall evaluation was the final average of several aspects. Two people with the same 8-star talent might not necessarily have the same level of talent in all aspects. It was possible that one of them had higher comprehension talent and lower battle talent, or vice versa. Comprehension talent was helpful for comprehension, but it was not as useful as battle talent in battle. Coincidentally, Li Lin's battle talent was very high, slightly higher than Yang Rui's. Moreover, the 5 elements restrained each other. Fire restrained metal, so it had a certain effect. The two of them fought for a while, and Yang Rui began to be at a disadvantage. Immemorial sword seal. Without the slightest hesitation, Yang Rui used a secret technique. The second layer of the immemorial sword seal was activated, increasing his sharpness by 20%, directly suppressing his opponent. It was true that fire restrained metal, but it was relative. When metal's sharpness exceeded fire's power, the mutual restraint would not exist. However, if the two were at the same level, the mutual restraint would take effect. Sky Martial Battle Seal. Li Lin also used a secret technique. The Immemorial Sword City had the Immemorial Sword Seal, while the Sky Martial Battle City had the Sky Martial Battle Seal. It was a secret technique created by the first Sky Martial Battle Sovereign after he returned from his travels in the depths of the chaotic universe. The Immemorial Sword City focused on sword cultivation, while the Sky Martial Battle City focused on body cultivation. Li Lin was a powerful body cultivator. The Immemorial Sword Seal increased sharpness, while the Sky Martial Battle City strengthened the body. Coincidentally, Li Lin's Sky Martial Battle Seal was also at the second layer, increasing its power by 20%. Li Lin suppressed Yang Rui once again. A moment later, his palm landed on Yang Rui's sword. The tyrannical power passed through the sword and directly bombarded Yang Rui's body, sending him flying out of the arena. After winning, Li Lin did not continue to wait for others to challenge him. Instead, he immediately jumped out of the arena. Defeating Yang Rui had not been easy for him. He had used up a lot of his power, so he was not confident in winning the second battle. My name is Emo Xiaotian, 9-star talent, mid-level, Great Holy Master cultivation base. Who wants to fight with me? The second genius of the Sky Martial Battle City stepped onto the arena. My name is Li Han, 9-star talent, mid-level, Great Holy Master cultivation base. Li Han jumped onto the arena and said to Emo Xiaotian. It was the same talent and cultivation base. It was a fair battle. After several years of cultivation and completing the mission of collecting demon blood, Li Han had obtained hundreds of clan merit points. He had made full use of them, and his strength had increased significantly. His sword, a giant sword, slashed out, and a sword light the color of the earth instantly broke through the air, carrying the sharpness of the sword and the weight of the earth. Under the combination of the two forces, The power of this sword light was even more terrifying. "I'll crush you with one punch," Emo Shoutian shouted. His fist glowed with golden light. He punched out, overbearing and sharp. His powerful physique combined with the sharp power of the law of metal. Li Han was a sword cultivator, but his body was naturally stronger than ordinary people. With his cultivation and his comprehension of the earth's cosmic energy, his body was constantly increasing. Although he could not be compared with his opponent, he was still much stronger than other sword cultivators of the same level. Li Han and Emo Shoutian closed in on each other. Their giant swords and fists collided again and again. Their eyes stared at each other, emitting sharp light. A terrifying shockwave spread out in all directions. Emo Shoutian forced Li Han to retreat, and at the same time he also retreated quickly. Then Emo Shoutian's hands moved, and his fist and palm changed. Sky Martial Holy Seal, Broken Gold Seal. Soon after, a huge golden seal instantly condensed in the sky. It looked like a fist, but also like a palm. It emitted a sharp and terrifying pressure. When the seal fell, it was as if a golden mountain was pressing down. Sky Martial Holy Seal was one of the unique techniques of the Sky Martial Battle City, just like the sword celestial wall of the ancient sword city. Different people could comprehend different hand seals from the celestial martial seal. Each hand seal contained a terrifying power. The golden fragmentation seal was a seal technique that Emo Shoutian had comprehended from the celestial martial seal. It contained the power of the law of gold. When it was suppressed, it would be torn apart by the power contained within. Hence, it was named golden fragmentation. Thick earth sword. Li Han moved quickly and rushed towards Emo Shoutian. He slashed out with his sword. The power of the law of earth was condensed in it. Together with the sharpness and powerful force of the giant sword, it turned into a powerful sword light and slashed out. The broken gold seal smashed towards Li Han, and the thick earth sword slashed towards Emo Shoutian. It seemed like Li Han wanted to die together with Emo Shoutian. Emo Shoutian couldn't do that. He immediately controlled the broken gold seal to block the thick earth sword. An ear-piercing sound spread in the air. The broken gold seal was used as a shield to block the thick earth sword's attack. The thick earth sword's power was exhausted, and the broken gold seal was also destroyed. The broken gold seal turned into countless rays of golden light, and a silhouette appeared in the midst of those rays of golden light. It was a dazzling sword light. The dense laws of earth and the sharp and domineering sword intent caused the might of this sword to be even more terrifying. Emo Shoutian's expression slightly changed, and he hastily retreated. His steps were messy, but each time he took a step, golden ripples spread in the air. It was a mystical footwork technique. The golden ripples spread in the air, and a strange power appeared on the battle stage, which affected Li Han's movements. Break! Li Han stomped down heavily. The tyrannical power directly destroyed the influence of the golden ripples. Borrowing the strength of this stomp, he burst forth with an even more astonishing speed. His giant sword pierced forward, instantly charging forward. After a charge and a sword stab, although they were blocked, Li Han also seized the opportunity. Under the wave of the giant sword, he launched a fierce and overbearing attack. The momentum of the attack was endless. Ever since Li Han had been defeated by Chu Mu a few years ago, he had been thinking about that battle. He had gradually comprehended Chu Mu's combo moves. Then he had entered the demon domain to collect demon blood and fought against half-step great emperors of the demon race. He had perfected his combo moves. Combo moves focused on timing. After grasping the opportunity, he would attack continuously, disrupting the opponent's rhythm and making them unable to seize the opportunity to counterattack. After a few years, Li Han had perfected his combo moves. This time, he immediately suppressed Emo Shoutian. When the person surnamed Wu from Tianwu Battle City saw this, his eyes lit up. He was a little surprised. Emo Xiaotian was gradually suppressed by the combo moves. Then he was struck by Li Han's sword and was sent flying. He had suffered some minor injuries and was defeated. Don't be complacent. Defeating me is nothing. The main character this time is Senior Brother Wu. Emo Xiaotian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said, Senior Brother Wu is our Tianwu Battle City's peak genius. Now he's the #1 genius of our Tianwu Battle City. Chapter 2204. He was the top 12-star Peerless Heavens, pride of Heaven Martial Battle City. After Emo Xiaobai revealed his identity, the Heavens Pride of the Immemorial Sword City were shocked. In a flash, many thoughts flashed through their minds. In the end, all of them turned into a question. What was his purpose in coming here? Was it just a simple exchange? Not necessarily. My name is Wu Kuangsheng. The man stood on the stage and spoke in a calm voice. However, everyone could clearly feel that his body was constantly emitting a domineering aura. Great Sage Mid-Level, 12-star talent. I welcome anyone to challenge me, including the 12-star Peerless Heavens, Pride of the Heavens Pride Battalion. Everyone immediately understood that Wu Kuangsheng was here for Chumu. Heaven Martial Battle City had a Peerless Heavens Pride. Myriad Sect Dao City also had one. Later on, the Immemorial Sword City also had a Peerless Heavens Pride of the Golden Light Peerless Heavens Pride list. After knowing this, Wu Kuangsheng, who loved to fight, couldn't wait to fight him. This time, under the arrangement of the Heaven Martial Battle City's higher-ups, he came to the Immemorial Sword City's Pride Battalion. His target was Chumu. Let me test the strength of a Peerless Heavens Pride. Feng Yunwuxia arrived on the stage like a gust of wind, facing Wu Kuangsheng. Compared to a few years ago, Feng Yunwuxia's cultivation had increased a lot. However, he was still at the high-level half-step Great Sovereign Realm. Wu Kuangsheng's aura was also at the high-level half-step Great Sovereign Realm, but he didn't seem to be stronger than Feng Yunwuxia. This was one of the reasons why Feng Yunwuxia dared to challenge him. You're not my opponent. Wu Kuangsheng glanced at Feng Yunwuxia indifferently and said in a calm voice, as if he was stating a fact, We'll know whether I'm your opponent or not after we fight. Feng Yunwuxia didn't get angry. He just smiled and held his long sword in his hand. Then I'll give you a chance, Wu Kuangsheng said in a calm voice. However, his words contained an absolute confidence. This was a kind of overbearing and crazy. Gale's sword. Feng Yunwuxia also knew that Wu Kuangsheng's strength must be very strong, especially since he was a 12-star Peerless Heavens Pride. Therefore, he used one of his sword skills, Illusion Cloud Sword. After the Gale Sword, Feng Yunwuxia used his second sword technique, the Illusion Cloud Sword. The longer a prodigy stayed in the prodigy camp, the more powerful the sword principal techniques they mastered would be, and the number of them would also increase. This was a relatively common phenomenon. Feng Yunwuxia had stayed in the prodigy camp for more than 10 years. Naturally, he had mastered more than one sword technique. Illusion, sword. The Cloud Sword Technique. Feng Yunwuxia's third illusions is his illusion. The Gale sword contained the power of the law of wind and was extremely sharp. It sliced through the void, while the illusionary cloud sword contained the power of the law of clouds. It was extremely mysterious and unpredictable. The two sword skills attacked Wu Kuangsheng one after the other. Then the third skill combined with the sword skill, the illusionary cloud sword. Interesting. A trace of a smile flashed across Wu Kuangsheng's face. Facing Feng Wuxia's sword technique, he did not have any intention of dodging. He raised his palm and put it together. It seemed as if his palm was covered with a sparkling luster. Then he gently pushed his palm forward, as if he was gently pushing open a door. This seemingly ordinary palm strike contained an incomparably terrifying power. This palm strike directly destroyed the Gale Sword, then the Fantasy Cloud Sword. Finally, it collided with the Gale Fantasy Cloud Sword before both of them dissipated. Such an outcome stunned Feng Wuxia. He had estimated that Yi Futian's strength would be stronger than his, but there would be a limit. He had never thought that Yi Futian would be so much stronger than him. Yi Futian's seemingly ordinary palm had actually defeated all three of his ultimate sword skills. Its power was indescribable. With that thought, Feng Yunwuxia used his secret technique, immemorial sword seal. At the center of Feng Yunwuxia's eyebrows, one sword mark after another lit up. There were a total of 4. After more than 10 years of cultivation, Feng Yunwuxia had cultivated the immemorial sword seal to the 4th layer. Once he used it, he would be able to increase his sharpness by 4 layers. Not all sky prides who had cultivated for more than 10 years could master the 4th layer of the immemorial sword seal. Most of them could only cultivate to the 3rd layer because it required time and resources. Feng Yunwuxia was able to cultivate to the 4th layer because he had spent a lot of his clan merit points in the burial sword abyss. With the 4 layers of sharpness, Feng Yunwuxia's sharpness aura became even more intense and astonishing. His entire body seemed to have turned into a sharp sword, giving off an aura of invincibility. Feng Yunwuxia, who had displayed the 4th layer of the immemorial sword seal, made Wu Kuangsheng take him seriously. Gale Sword. Fantasy Cloud Sword. Gale Fantasy Cloud Sword. It was still the same 3 ultimate sword skills from before. However, at this moment, its power was completely different from before. It was much stronger, and the enhancement from the 4 layers of sharpness was very significant. Facing the same ultimate sword skill, Wu Kuangsheng's expression did not change, but his eyes became more serious. He clenched his fist, and a tyrannical power condensed within it. Then he threw out a punch that pierced through the void and tore the earth apart. It shattered the Gale Sword, but was defeated by the Fantasy Cloud Sword and continued to attack Wu Kuangsheng. Heavenly Martial Saint Seal, Heavenly Thunder Seal. Wu Kuangsheng's hands moved, and the seal formed by the power of thunder struck down. After shattering the Fantasy Cloud Sword, it then defeated the Gale Fantasy Cloud Sword and bombarded Feng Yunwuxia. Feng Yunwuxia's expression was serious, and he released all of his power. It seemed as if the wind and clouds in the sky were surging, revolving around his body like an invisible flood dragon. He slowly raised his long sword, as if it was carrying the power of the wind and clouds. In the whistling sound, the invisible flood dragon attached itself to the long sword, and its body appeared. It raised its head and roared, and the dragon's roar shook the sky. Slash! Feng Yunwuxia shouted as he waved his long sword and slashed at the Heavenly Thunder Seal. This sword attack's power surpassed the Gale Fantasy Cloud Sword, and it was something that Feng Yunwuxia had not mastered before. It was a sword attack that he had suddenly comprehended under Wu Kuangsheng's pressure. This sword attack was equivalent to the Gale Fantasy Cloud Sword Sublimation. A sword skill that transformed into a flood dragon was a sign of sublimation. The Heavenly Thunder Seal was shattered, and the sword-light flood dragon swooped down, locking onto Wu Kuangsheng. Heavenly Martial Saint Seal. Exploding Thunder Seal. Wu Kuangsheng's expression became serious, and he used his second ultimate martial skill, the Exploding Thunder Seal. The Heavenly Thunder Seal was the foundation, and the Exploding Thunder Seal was even more tyrannical than the Heavenly Thunder Seal. The Exploding Thunder Seal fell and turned into an extremely violent thunderbolt, directly attacking the Flood Dragon. The Flood Dragon trembled as if it had been electrocuted and was defeated by the Exploding Thunder Seal. At the same time, the Exploding Thunder Seal's power was greatly consumed. Feng Yunwuxia's sword attack shattered the thunderbolt and rushed towards Wu Kuangsheng at an extremely fast speed. Wu Kuangsheng grabbed Feng Yunwuxia's sword with one hand, and his other hand slapped Feng Yunwuxie's ribs like a butterfly. A tyrannical power blasted into Feng Yunwuxie's body, making him tremble like a fish that had been electrocuted. He lost all his strength, and his whole body softly fell down. Feng Yunwuxie was not seriously injured, and Wu Kuangsheng had shown mercy. That last palm attack had caused Feng Yunwuxie to lose all his strength for a short period of time. Although it had only been a breath's time, it was enough to determine the winner. You're the number one genius of the Heaven Martial Battle City, and I'm the number one genius of the ancient Sword City. I'll give you 15 minutes to recover your strength, and then we'll fight again. Wu Zhonglei had appeared out of nowhere, and after watching the battle between Wu Kuangsheng and Feng Yunwuxie, he jumped onto the stage and said to Wu Kuangsheng. His eyes were filled with battle intent. Wu Zhonglei was a battle maniac, and in the entire Heaven's Pride Battalion, no one was more battle maniac than him. No need. Wu Kuangsheng was even crazier. He could see that Wu Zhonglei was strong enough to be his opponent, so he threw out a punch. In the Heaven's Pride Battalion of the Sword Union, the geniuses of the Heaven's Pride Battalion were all at the peak of the half-step Great Sovereign Realm. However, the number one genius of the Heaven's Pride Battalion was not at the peak of the half-step Great Sovereign Realm, but was infinitely close to it. For example, Wu Zhonglei and Wu Kuangsheng. In terms of cultivation, Wu Kuangsheng and Wu Zhonglei were at the same level. All right. Wu Zhonglei laughed heartily. He didn't use his sword, but instead punched out. That punch gave people the feeling of a sword, full of sharpness and overbearingness. The two fists collided, and the stage shook, causing both of them to take a few steps back. Wu Zhonglei was a battle maniac, so he had quite an achievement in body refining. Perhaps he wasn't as good as Wu Kuangsheng, but he wouldn't be inferior if he used his own yuan qi. Wu Zhonglei cultivated the sword Dao, but his sword Dao was different from other sword cultivators. He used his own body as a weapon, as a sword, evolving the man and sword as one to another extreme. Many people were optimistic about Wu Zhonglei, especially the high-level experts. They believed that Wu Zhonglei had walked on a new path, and if he could continue walking on it to the extreme, he might be able to create a new kind of sword Dao and make a great contribution to the accumulation of human civilization. However, a new path wasn't easy to walk, and it was even more difficult to complete. Whether Wu Zhonglei could walk on it to the extreme was still unknown. Even Wu Zhonglei himself didn't have the slightest confidence. Wu Zhonglei stretched out his arms and legs. His fists, arms, and legs were like sharp swords. His strength was incomparably tyrannical, and was filled with the sharpness of a sword. It cut through the void and rushed towards Wu Kuangsheng. For a moment, Wu Kuangsheng was under great pressure. What a strange martial Dao! Wu Kuangsheng said inwardly. His strength erupted. In the battle with Feng Yunwuxie, he hadn't used his full strength and only used about 70% of his strength. But now he was using 100% of his strength. Tyrannical power surged in all directions, and waves of pressure formed into cyclones. Each of Wu Kuangsheng's attacks was more terrifying and tyrannical than before. Chapter 2205. In the Straight Sword Hall, the battle between Wu Kuangsheng and Wu Zhonglei was gradually becoming more and more intense. It was incomparably exciting. It's him. Chu Mu, who had just come out of seclusion, heard some news and came to the Straight Sword Hall. He was surprised to see Wu Kuangsheng on the stage. This person was the one who had killed the high-level half-step great sovereign of the demon race that Chu Mu had been chasing in the demon domain. He had said to Chu Mu that they would meet again in the future. Chu Mu did not expect that it would be under such circumstances. Wu Kuangsheng, Heaven Martial Battle City's 12-star Peerless Heaven's Pride. Chu Mu repeated to himself as he listened to other people's words. Deep in his eyes, a wisp of light gradually lit up. In the past 3 years, Chu Mu had been cultivating for 3 years after returning from the demon domain to the ancient sword city's Heaven's Pride Camp. Excluding the 5 months spent comprehending the sword Dao Heavenly Wall, Chu Mu had spent the remaining 2 years in seclusion in the unique restaurant. First, he had observed and comprehended the demon sword fragment. His consciousness had returned to the ancient war, and he had seen the means of countless experts. He had accumulated experience for his own sword Dao. Then he had embarked on the path of creating his own sword Dao. Creating his own sword Dao was more than 10 times more difficult than creating his own sword Dao. Therefore, Chu Mu had spent a lot more time on it. The embryonic form of his sword Dao had made Chu Mu feel that it was difficult to continue. After consolidating it, he had created his own sword Dao Heavenly Wall. It was just one move, but it took him more than a year to successfully create it. However, he could not create the second move because he had to further perfect his sword Dao Heavenly Wall. Chu Mu came out of seclusion. After he came out, he found a message. Only then did he know that the geniuses of the Heaven Martial Battle City had come to exchange pointers. They were currently in the upright sword hall. After cultivating in seclusion for 3 years, Chu Mu's strength had increased significantly, whether it was comprehending the demonic sword fragment, the sword Dao Skywall, or his self-created sword Dao sword art. He wanted to fight someone, so he came to the upright sword hall. Wu Zhonglei's strength was very strong, and Wu Guangsheng had gone all out to deal with him. Therefore, he did not notice Chu Mu's presence. In fact, even if he did, he wouldn't recognize Chu Mu and wouldn't know that he was his target. Big brother. Not long after Chu Mu arrived, Li Han noticed him and hurriedly walked over. You've made a breakthrough in your cultivation. Your cultivation has also improved a lot. Chu Mu glanced at Li Han and smiled. In these 3 years, Chu Mu devoted himself to comprehending and creating his own sword principle and sword art. He did not practice any cultivation techniques at all. Theoretically, his cultivation would not increase, but the sword principle origin automatically operated. Bit by bit, the effect was very obvious. He actually broke through the lesser sacred master level and reached the lower great sacred master level. The jump from little sacred venerate to great sacred venerate was a rather large one. Chu Mu's strength had also increased significantly because of this. After 3 years of seclusion, Chu Mu seemed even more reserved, like a sword hidden in its sheath. Li Han felt that this Chu Mu was even more terrifying. Wu Guangsheng is the number 1 person below the Heaven's Pride ranking of the Heaven's Pride Battalion. Wu Zhonglei is the number 1 person below the Heaven's Pride ranking of the Heaven's Pride Battalion. Li Han said, letting Chu Mu know the identity of the person who had fought fiercely with Wu Guangsheng. Li Han, Wu Zhonglei is also a sword cultivator, right? Chu Mu asked, but he was not sure because Wu Zhonglei was empty-handed and did not use a sword. Yes, Li Han said with certainty. Wu Zhonglei is a sword cultivator, but the sword principle he cultivates is completely different from other sword cultivators. Wu Zhonglei once had a fortuitous encounter, and that fortuitous encounter allowed him to receive the inheritance of a senior. It is that sword principle that does not use a sword, but uses his own body as a sword. However, this sword principle seems to be incomplete, but the higher-ups unanimously agreed that Wu Zhonglei's sword principle has boundless potential. Chu Mu nodded, staring at Wu Zhonglei. Wu Zhonglei's sword principle had aroused his great interest. Using his own body as a sword. Unknowingly, Chu Mu fell into deep thought. What kind of sword principle would use one's own body as a sword? However, after pondering for a while, Chu Mu could not think of anything because he had no clue at all. Maybe I can find an opportunity to ask Wu Zhonglei for advice. Chu Mu thought. After making up his mind, Chu Mu focused on watching the battle between the two sides. The more he watched, the more Chu Mu felt that Wu Zhonglei's sword principle was profound. Wu Guangxing's strength was powerful, and his martial Dao was exquisite. The The battle between him and Wu Zhonglei was very exciting, and it also gave Chu Mu a lot of inspiration. Under Chu Mu's observation, Wu Zhonglei did not seem to have mastered any sword principle lost art, but the power of each of his attacks was very terrifying. Perhaps he had integrated the sword principle lost art into his body, into his hands and feet, and into each of his attacks. Every movement is a sword principle. Chu Mu thought. He had such a feeling. On the other hand, Wu Guangxing's sword principle lost art was endless. Heavenly Martial Saint Seal, Heavenly Thunder Seal, Heavenly Martial Saint Seal, Exploding Thunder Seal, Heavenly Martial Saint Seal, Wild Thunder Seal. Wu Guangxing's main cultivation seemed to be the law of thunder. With the law of thunder as his main cultivation, he could condense a terrifying battle seal. 3 battle seals, each stronger than the previous, bombarded Wu Zhonglei. However, Wu Zhonglei did not dodge, as if he had turned into a giant sword and directly slashed. Wu Zhonglei's fighting style was very direct and also very violent. It was completely head-on. No matter what the opponent's attack was, he would kill it with one sword. He had a kind of belief that he would not give up until he defeated the opponent. What a peculiar sword path, Chu Mu said to himself. The more he watched, the stronger his desire to understand it became. Immemorial Sword Seal. Wu Zhonglei displayed the immemorial sword seal. Suddenly, 5 sword seals lit up between his eyebrows, and its sharpness increased by 50%. Heavenly Martial Battle Seal. Wu Guangxing also displayed the 4th layer of the Heavenly Martial Battle City's secret technique. Wu Zhonglei's sharpness had increased by 50%. To a certain extent, it was equivalent to his strength increasing by 50%. In an instant, Wu Zhonglei was able to suppress Wu Guangxing, whose strength had increased by 40%. Now that things have come to this, I won't hold back anymore, Wu Guangxing said as he formed a seal with both of his hands. His right hand was suffused with lightning, while his left hand was surrounded by blazing flames. The power of the law of thunder and the power of the law of fire intertwined. In a sense, lightning and fire came from the same source. Heavenly Martial Holy Seal. Heavenly Lightning Earthly Fire Seal. Wu Guangxing condensed a seal with both of his hands. The power of the law of lightning and the law of fire intertwined and condensed into a seal. Then, a seal with 2 different colors intertwined with each other appeared. A dreadful power pervaded in all directions and blasted towards Wu Zhonglei. The vast majority of cultivators mainly cultivated one type of law, with one or a few supporting powers of law. There were a few who mainly cultivated 2 types of law, with a few supporting powers of law. The difference between the main and supporting powers of law was obvious. The supporting powers of law were often used to supplement one's strength. The strength of Wu Guangxing's thunder law and fire law was astonishing. One could tell at a glance that he was a major cultivator. The power of these 2 major laws was fused together through the mysteries of martial arts. The power released was even more terrifying. The appearance of the heavenly lightning and earthly fire seal caused everyone's expression to change greatly. Li Lin and Mo Xiaotian were even more shocked. Obviously, they did not know that Wu Guangxing had such a method. Wu Zhonglei was directly bombarded. The power of the heavenly lightning and earthly fire was astonishing and tyrannical. It directly sent Wu Zhonglei flying. Heavenly lightning seal. Earthly fire seal. Rumbling thunder seal. Burning fire seal. Wild thunder seal. Bursting fire seal. Heavenly lightning and earthly fire seal. At the moment when Wu Zhonglei was bombarded, the power of law of thunder and law of fire impacted his whole body, making him unable to fight back for a moment. Wu Guangxing's power completely erupted. Seals intertwined and bombarded Wu Zhonglei. Each of the seals bombarded Wu Zhonglei's body, affecting the power that Wu Zhonglei had not yet gathered. Finally, The heavenly lightning and earthly fire seal bombarded Wu Zhonglei again. Wu Zhonglei's body trembled. He could no longer support himself and was directly sent flying out of the arena. His face was pale and he was seriously injured. Wu Kuangsheng's aura seemed to have risen, but his strength had also been greatly consumed in this battle. As the number one under the Heaven's Pride list, the difference in strength was not that big. It had to be said that there was a little bit of luck involved in defeating Wu Zhonglei. If both of them had recovered to their peak and fought again, it would be hard to say who would win. But no matter what, Wu Zhonglei had lost this battle. Wu Zhonglei had lost. It was estimated that no one could be Wu Kuangsheng's opponent, unless it was a genius on the Heaven's Pride list. However, being on the Heaven's Pride list and not being on the Heaven's Pride list were two different concepts. If a genius on the Heaven's Pride list fought, defeating Wu Kuangsheng would not be a big deal. Wu Kuangsheng adjusted his breath to recover his strength and said, "Where are the 12-star peerless geniuses of the Heaven's Pride Battalion?" "I'm here," a voice sounded. Immediately, a figure flashed and Chu Mu appeared on the arena. "It's Chu Mu. He's here too. His cultivation has reached the early stage of the Great Saint Realm." Early stage of the Great Saint Realm. His strength should have increased a lot. However, Wu Kuangsheng's cultivation is at the middle stage of the Great Saint Realm, which is higher than Chu Mu's. His strength should also be higher than Chu Mu's. Chu Mu has no chance of winning this battle. All kinds of whispers sounded. What you've said is very well-founded speculation. But don't forget, when Chu Mu first entered the Heaven's Pride Battalion, he won several consecutive victories. It was completely unexpected. "It's you." Wu Kuangsheng was surprised to see Chu Mu. He still remembered Chu Mu. "Your cultivation has improved. Not bad. You're qualified to fight with me. I hope your strength won't disappoint me." "I don't think so." Chu Mu smiled faintly. Although Wu Kuangsheng's words were arrogant, he was not an enemy. Chu Mu did not care. In fact, Chu Mu did not know what level his strength had reached. He needed a suitable opponent to test it out. Chapter 2206. Although Wu Kuangsheng had won the battle with Wu Zhonglei, he had consumed 70 to 80% of his strength. Although he still had the strength to fight, his strength was not at its peak. He was at a disadvantage in the battle with Chu Mu. Chu Mu was not in a hurry to attack. He gave Wu Kuangsheng half an hour to recover. Wu Kuangsheng took some medicinal pills and circulated his cultivation technique. After half an hour, his strength was completely restored and his condition was adjusted. The li-perishing sword trembled slightly and a faint sword cry resounded. Immediately, Chu Mu took a step forward. His figure flickered as if he had crossed through space. Only a ray of sword light was left. The sword light pierced through the air and attacked Wu Kuangsheng. This sword did not seem to have the slightest bit of smoke and fire aura. It was so natural and smooth that people who saw it would have a feeling that it was supposed to be like this. Unknowingly, it affected people's minds, and it was difficult for people to notice. Wu Kuangsheng's expression changed slightly. It was as if an alarm bell had rung in his heart. He instantly struck out with his palms towards Chu Mu. He had seen Chu Mu once in the Devil Domain. At that time, Chu Mu was only a mid-level Lesser Sage Master. He did not expect that in just 3 years, Chu Mu had advanced to early-level Greater Sage Master. It would take an ordinary cultivator at least 5 to 10 years to cultivate from Lesser Sage Master to Greater Sage Master. In theory, it would be faster for geniuses and Heaven's Pride to increase their cultivation. However, theory was only theory. In fact, every Heaven's Pride had their own extraordinary aspects. Their strength was more refined, their dantian was bigger, and so on. This made it difficult for them to increase their cultivation. In 3 years, it was very fast to advance from mid-level Lesser Sage Master to early-level Greater Sage Master. Moreover, most of the time had to be spent on increasing their cultivation, so they had to reduce the time spent on other aspects of cultivation. Wu Kuangsheng did not know how good Chu Mu's sword art was 3 years ago. However, looking at his sword art now, he felt that it was very skillful. In the blink of an eye, Chu Mu and Wu Kuangsheng fought fiercely. Chu Mu's cultivation was at the initial stage of the Great Sacred Master, while Wu Kuangsheng's cultivation was at the middle stage of the Great Sacred Master. The two of them were both at the high-class half-step Great Emperor level. Without using any techniques, they were evenly matched. Chu Mu's purpose was naturally to verify which level his strength was at. He could not accurately verify the level of his swordsmanship or unique swordsmanship. Moreover, during the 3 years of meditation, although he did not deliberately, his swordsmanship realm had improved a little. It was infinitely close to the Middle Heaven realm level. Unknowingly, Chu Mu's basic swordsmanship had become more profound and mysterious. The Li perishing sword was like an arm to Shao Qin. Shao Qin was able to wield it with ease, using every bit of strength to its limits. It was like an art, a grandmaster's art. It was incomparable and gave people a pleasing feeling. It was like a painting, but each strike contained killing intent. Chu Mu had seen Wu Kuangsheng's battle. Wu Kuangsheng's martial attainment was profound. The heavenly martial seal's power was indeed extraordinary. He was a strong opponent. Chu Mu was not confident that he could defeat him. The battle between the two was incomparably intense. Every move and style was full of changes. It was unfathomable. The spectators were intoxicated by it. It has only been a few years. Chu Mu actually has such strength. It's too amazing. Is this the ability of a peak, peerless genius? In just a few years, Chu Mu's strength had increased. It was indeed very shocking. As Wu Zhonglei watched the fight on the stage, he felt his blood boiling. His fighting intent was unceasingly pervading the air. He wished he could rush up and have a big fight, but he didn't do so. Firstly, it was a fight between Chu Mu and Wu Kuangsheng. Secondly, his current strength hadn't fully recovered yet. The best of the best geniuses are indeed extraordinary. Wu Zhonglei said secretly. His talent was only at the level of a 9-star Heaven's Pride. The reason why he could become the first ranker of the Heaven's Pride list was because his cultivation was relatively high. Secondly, his sword Dao was different from other sword cultivators. It was a new kind of sword Dao. Moreover, it was very powerful. Although Wu Kuangsheng's cultivation was higher than Chu Mu's, Chu Mu cultivated the truth-seeking technique. The power of the great true force was astonishing. Moreover, he had mastered the origin of sword Dao. It was a kind of power that surpassed the laws. Under such a combination, Chu Mu's absolute strength was not inferior to Wu Kuangsheng's. They collided again and again. There was strength, speed, and skill. Heavenly martial seal, heavenly thunder seal. After a long battle, Wu Kuangsheng was unable to suppress his opponent. Wu Kuangsheng used the heavenly martial seal, the heavenly martial seal. Chu Mu's figure flashed, avoiding the heavenly thunder's bombardment. Then, he slashed his sword towards Wu Kuangsheng. However, the heavenly thunder locked onto Chu Mu and directly chased after him. Helpless, Chu Mu could only turn around and use the sharp golden sword. The golden sword light was extremely condensed. It instantly pierced through the void and shattered the heavenly thunder. Once again, it turned around and turned into a raging flame. It was the raging flame sword. The terrifying heat rushed towards Wu Kuangsheng, making him feel as if he was being burned. Wu Kuangsheng shifted his feet and used his movement technique. In a flash, he disappeared, causing the raging flame sword to miss. At the same time, the earth fire seal rushed up from below the stage. Chu Mu narrowly avoided it. The 5 elements sword techniques, sharp golden sword, greenwood sword, tide sword, raging flame sword, and thick earth sword. After 3 years, although Chu Mu did not deliberately comprehend or cultivate them, they had also improved. They had become more powerful, and when used, their power was astonishing. He actually mastered 5 moves of the sword Dao. Feng Wuxia was also shocked. He had joined the Heaven's Pride Battalion earlier than Chu Mu, but until now he had only comprehended 3 sword techniques. No, after the battle with Wu Kuangsheng, he had broken through under the pressure and grasped the 4th sword technique. However, Chu Mu had only joined the Heaven's Pride Battalion for a little more than 4 years, and he had already mastered 5 sword techniques. It was extremely shocking. Moreover, there were the 5 elements. Could it be that his main law is the 5 elements? Feng Wuxia thought inwardly, no. Other than those 5 sword techniques, I didn't feel the 5 elements law's energy, fluctuation from his body. In the past, Feng Wuxia had never thought about this. Now that he thought about it, he felt strange because he did not feel any law's energy fluctuation from Chu Mu's usual attacks. One must know that for someone like him who mainly cultivated the law of wind and the law of clouds, his attacks would carry the energy fluctuation of these 2 forces. It was very obvious, and no one could avoid it unless they did not use the law's energy. However, without using the law's energy, one's strength could not be fully displayed. If it was a simple exchange of pointers, perhaps he would not use the law's energy. However, in a battle like this, not using the law's energy was simply courting death. Feng Wuxia was puzzled. At this time, the battle between Chu Mu and Wu Kuangsheng had reached its climax. Wu Kuangsheng's lightning seal and fire seal could not do anything to Chu Mu, so he used the lightning and fire seal. The heavenly lightning, earthly fire seal was the foundation of the lightning seal. It was similar to the heavenly lightning seal. The heavenly lightning, earthly fire seal's power was tyrannical. Chu Mu did not dare to be careless, but he also had a way to deal with it. Fight, fight, fight. Immemorial sword seals, 3rd layer. Sky martial battle seals, 4th layer. Both of them displayed their secret techniques. In the past 3 years, Chu Mu had been in seclusion and did not cultivate the immemorial sword seal. Therefore, it was still at the 3rd layer, and its sharpness was enhanced by 30%. Under the effects of the secret techniques, the aura emitted by both of them was incomparably tyrannical, causing everyone's expression to change greatly. Imperceptibly, the big shots of the celestial martial battle city and the big shots of the immemorial sword city were also watching the battle. The big shots of the celestial martial battle city and the big shots of the immemorial sword city were extremely surprised. However, the big shots of the immemorial sword city were smiling. Wu Kuangsheng was a 12-star peerless heavens, pride of the sky martial battle city. His talent was outstanding. Moreover, he had joined the sky martial battle city's heavens pride battalion 2 years earlier than Chu Mu. The heavens pride battalion's resources were very rich. An extra year's time was equivalent to an extra advantage, especially for those peerless heavens pride. They would make full use of every bit of advantage to maximize their own strength. An extra 2 years' time meant an extra 20% chance. Of course, if it was a battle between a heaven's pride and a peerless heaven's pride, even if the heaven's pride had a few more years of development, he would still be overtaken. That was the absolute disparity in talent. However, Wu Kuangsheng was also a top 12-star genius. Would the disparity be so big? For a moment, the giants were very puzzled. Although they were very clear that there were differences among 12-star geniuses, it should not be so obvious. Looking at the past, this was the case. However, Chu Mu had become a special case. While the giants were surprised and puzzled, the battle between Chu Mu and Wu Kuangsheng became more and more intense. Rumbling, thunder, fire seal. Wu Kuangsheng displayed a new seal technique. Its power was much stronger than the heavenly lightning hellfire seal. Chu Mu unsheathed his sword light. His sword was incomparably tyrannical. It unceasingly slashed at the rumbling thunder fire seal, attacking its weak points. Using his own strength and superb swordsmanship, he deviated the trajectory of the rumbling thunder fire seal. Then he took a step forward and used the second stage of the four-sided truth-seeking step. After 3 years of closed-door training, the embryonic form of the sword principle and the self-created sword art are in this sword. Chu Mu thought to himself. Soon after, he let out a low roar. His voice was like a sudden clap of thunder, causing the ears of the people around the stage to ring incessantly. His figure disappeared, leaving behind only a sword light. Sword 1. It looked like a simple sword light, but it was so bright. It seemed to contain all the light in the world. It contained an indescribable power and speed. The void was pierced by the sword. Everything disappeared between heaven and earth. Only that sword light seemed to have become eternal. Under this sword, Wu Kuangsheng was startled. His pupils shrank sharply. The giants who were secretly watching the battle were also shocked. They felt a kind of familiar yet strange aura from that sword. It was very profound and mysterious. Chapter 2207. First sword. It was just a sword, but it instantly pierced out. It condensed Chu Mu's strength, condensed Chu Mu's spirit, condensed his faith, and condensed his understanding of the sword, his understanding of the sword, his understanding of the sword, and his understanding of the sword Tao. It was just a sword, and he had given it his all. The higher the realm of the cultivator, the more mysterious they would feel when they saw this sword. This sword was the perfect combination of strength and speed. It was too fast, completely out of Wu Kuangsheng's expectation. He couldn't dodge it and could only raise his hands to resist. This sword was not only fast, but also contained a tyrannical power. Wu Kuangsheng's face suddenly changed as he was pushed back by the tyrannical power of this sword. He tried his best to control his body, but it was difficult to do so. He fell off the stage, his arms were trembling, and waves of numbness spread throughout his body. His blood and qi flowed backwards. Chu Mu's figure appeared, standing at the edge of the stage, looking down. The power of that sword was still there, making him look like a god. What's the name of that sword? Wu Kuangsheng raised his head and looked at Chu Mu. First sword. Chu Mu said, First sword, I will remember it. Next time I will defeat it. Wu Kuangsheng said. His tone was full of confidence. Even if he was defeated this time, it did not affect his confidence. I'm looking forward to it. Chu Mu said. The battle with Wu Kuangsheng made him realize how strong he was. There was no doubt that Wu Kuangsheng was a very good opponent. Wu Kuangsheng's goal was achieved, so he did not stay for long. He left with the other two, and soon left the immemorial sword city with the giants of the Heaven Martial Battle City. After Wu Kuangsheng left, Chu Mu also left the Straight Sword Hall. Although that sword seems very immature in our eyes, it has a profound and unfathomable quality to it, said one of the giants of the ancient sword city. From that sword, I seem to have seen the mysteries of the universe. Another giant said, I have never seen or heard of that sword. Could it be that Chu Mu created it himself? If it's his own creation, his comprehension ability is truly incomparably astonishing. Number 1 on the Golden Light Peerless rankings. This child's potential is astonishing. The giants discussed. They were very optimistic about Chu Mu's future. Perhaps he will become the next demigod sovereign. Even though it was simply too difficult to become a half-god utmost exalted, and it was not directly related to one's talent, if one's talent reached a certain level, it would still affect one's progress. Chu Mu didn't know what the big shots thought of him. In fact, he didn't even think that the big shots would be watching in the dark. After returning to the unique restaurant, Chu Mu recalled today's battle. Wu Kuangsheng was a very good opponent. He allowed Chu Mu to fully display his strength. Aside from the secrets of the human Tao, he did not hold anything back. He was also certain that if he didn't use Sword One, he wouldn't have been able to defeat Wu Kuangsheng. Speaking of Sword One, it was the first sword of Chu Mu's self-created sword art under the embryonic form of the sword Tao. Chu Mu hesitated for a long time to create this sword art because he wasn't sure what kind of sword art he should create. After all, it had to be powerful enough to unify the strength of his body. It also had to have enough potential and be incomparably compatible with him. In the end, Chu Mu was inspired and his thoughts were clear. He used the world's end sword art as the foundation and fused various mysteries to create this sword art. He named it Sword One after combining strength and speed. All martial arts were about strength, speed, and skill. To have enough power, one must have enough strength and speed. Otherwise, where would the power come from? This sword art was named Sword One. It was the first sword art of his self-created sword art. It also signified the beginning of a new path. It had a profound meaning. Sword One was fine when it was not used, but once it was used, victory and defeat had to be decided. Life and death had to be decided. It did not have the astonishing killing intent of lifeless sword style, but it had fused all of Chu Mu's strength into one sword. Compared to lifeless sword style, it was much more tyrannical. It was precisely this kind of power that allowed him to defeat Wu Guangsheng in one sword. However, this Sword One was newly created. It was also Chu Mu's first time using it. Therefore, he wasn't clear about its flaws. Even though he only used it once during the battle with Wu Guangsheng, Chu Mu had a deeper understanding of it. After comprehending it for a while, Chu Mu left the unique restaurant to visit Wu Zhonglei. Wu Zhonglei lived in a stone mountain. There was an immortal cave on top of the mountain. "Brother, why are you looking for me?" Wu Zhonglei was a rather forthright person, and his personality was very familiar. The moment he spoke, Chu Mu felt as if he had known him for a while. "I saw the battle between Brother Wu and Wu Guangxing that day. I'm curious about Brother Wu's sword art, so I came to ask for advice." Chu Mu said straightforwardly, "I see." Wu Zhonglei was a little surprised. "You're one of the few people who are interested in my sword art. The inheritance of sword art is very strict. I just want to ask for advice. I don't covet it." Chu Mu said seriously. Every sword art had its own inheritance. There were even confidentiality rules. Although Chu Mu was curious, he didn't covet its mysteries. He was just curious and wanted to know as much as possible. It might be useful to him. Haha, it doesn't matter. When I inherited this sword art through a fortuitous encounter, the senior hoped that I could perfect this sword art and pass it down. Wu Zhonglei laughed and said, "Unfortunately, my talent is limited. After receiving the inheritance, I didn't make much progress. This sword art is still not perfect. In fact, I don't have the confidence to perfect this sword art. Because this sword art is different from other sword arts. Other sword arts use the sword as the carrier, but this sword art focuses on using the body as the sword. It's not only different from other sword arts, it's even somewhat opposite. It's difficult to coexist with other sword arts." Wu Zhonglei said. He was a little distressed because he had tried to impart this sword Dao to those who were more talented. It would be easier for those who were more talented to perfect this sword Dao. Unfortunately, this was an incomplete and imperfect sword Dao. It was different from the mainstream sword Dao. It was very difficult. Therefore, he didn't have much success. Chu Mu's initiative to ask was out of Wu Zhonglei's expectation. It also made Wu Zhonglei very excited because Chu Mu was a top Peerless Heaven's Pride. Moreover, he was a Peerless Heaven's Pride whose talent had reached 12 stars. Comprehension was extremely beneficial to one's comprehension. It was impossible to perfect this sword art without sufficient comprehension. It just so happened that comprehension was Wu Zhonglei's weakness. "Brother, this sword art originally didn't have a name. However, after I received the inheritance, I gave it a name." Wu Zhonglei became serious. Using the body as the sword, it's called the body sword art. The body sword art is very appropriate. Chu Mu nodded in agreement. "Brother, the power of the body sword art is actually very strong. It doesn't have any special moves, and there's no so-called ultimate move. However, every move can be considered as an ultimate move." Wu Zhonglei said again, "You also saw the battle between Wu Guangxing and me. Wu Guangxing was able to defeat me not because he's stronger than me." At this moment, Wu Zhonglei had the intention of boasting. He was trying his best to explain the power of the body sword art to Chu Mu. His purpose was naturally to further attract Chu Mu so that he could impart the body sword art to Chu Mu. Although Wu Zhonglei's words were somewhat exaggerated, Chu Mu didn't think so. In his opinion, the body sword art indeed had a lot of potential. Moreover, the flaws in it weren't actually flaws in Chu Mu's opinion. It was just that the body sword art wasn't perfect yet. After a sword art was perfected, the flaws in it would gradually be made up. As Wu Zhonglei said, the body sword art didn't have any ultimate moves. It couldn't even be called a sword art. On one hand, it was indeed because of the uniqueness of the body sword art. It used the body as a sword and pursued the maximum power of every strike. It was very terrifying. It wasn't inferior to other sword arts at all. It was even comparable to some ultimate moves. On the other hand, it was also because the body sword art wasn't perfect enough. Since Wu Zhonglei didn't have any intention to hide it, on the contrary, he intended to impart the body sword art and make it flourish. Chu Mu didn't have any psychological burden and asked for advice. One took the initiative to ask for advice, and the other was very willing to impart. The conversation between the two was very pleasant. Wu Zhonglei not only told Chu Mu all the contents of the body sword art that he had inherited, but also told Chu Mu about his own understanding over the years. Although the body sword art wasn't perfect, it had a certain foundation after all. It was a brand new sword art. It was very profound. Compared to Chu Mu's self-created sword art, it was many times more perfect. Every sword art was the crystallization of the wisdom of the predecessors. It required a lot of effort to accumulate understanding. Finally, under the right opportunity, it was created. Often, the creation was only a prototype. In the future, as one continued to experience and experience, it would be perfected little by little until it was perfect. Every sword art was not only the crystallization of wisdom, but also the life legend of an expert or several experts. It was a kind of civilization and an inheritance. This conversation went on for 10 days and 10 nights. Chu Mu and Wu Zhonglei didn't feel tired. "Brother, I'll leave the perfection of the body sword art to you." In the end, Wu Zhonglei patted Chu Mu's shoulder and said in a low voice. It was as if he was handing over the responsibility to him. "Brother Wu, I will spend some time to perfect it." Chu Mu thought for a while and said, "But I can't guarantee it." Because Chu Mu's purpose was only to absorb the mystery of the body sword art to strengthen his foundation and then perfect his own sword art. That was why he said so. Just do your best. Wu Zhonglei also said, although the higher the talent, the higher the possibility of perfecting the body sword art, it didn't mean that it could be perfected. After all, the body sword art was more magical, more unorthodox, and more difficult. Chapter 2208. The geniuses of the prodigy camp and the prodigy camp only had one mission, which was to use as many resources as possible to tap into their own potential, improve their cultivation, improve their abilities in all aspects, and increase their strength to make themselves stronger. Experience was indispensable, but the Sword Union had controlled many small worlds. There were many spiritual beasts and even demonized beasts in the small worlds, which provided a very good fighting ground. There were many places to comprehend, such as the Sword Dao Skywall and so on. It could be said that except for some extremely special items, everything else could be found in the Sword Union. However, those items that couldn't be found in the Sword Union were unlikely to be found even in the chaotic universe. Even if they were found, they wouldn't be able to do anything with their strength below the Great Emperor realm. In the entire cultivation system, regardless of the race, the level of the exceptional realm was equivalent to one's youth. That was the time to learn and enrich oneself, allowing one to become more capable. Only by breaking through the exceptional realm and reaching the Great Emperor realm would one be considered to have grown from youth to youth. Youth meant that one's body was strong, and it meant that one's temperament was beginning to mature. One had to bear the corresponding responsibility to support oneself and one's family. there was a very good cultivation environment. For the time being, Chu Mu didn't plan to leave and explore the outside world. This place was enough for him to improve himself without any worries for a period of time. Although Wu Zhonglei's body sword Dao wasn't perfect, it was still unpredictable and mysterious. Chu Mu spent a period of time comprehending it, intending to integrate it into his sword Dao to perfect his sword Dao. However, it was very difficult, and he couldn't find any clues. He had to put it aside for the time being and cultivate other things. There were too many things that could be cultivated, such as cultivation, swordsmanship, movement, footwork, and so on. Each of them required a considerable amount of time to comprehend. While cultivating, Chu Mu suddenly received news that the immemorial Sword Venerable was summoning him. The current immemorial Sword Venerable was the city lord of the immemorial Sword City. Why was he summoning him? Chu Mu was puzzled, but he still went to the city lord's mansion. The immemorial Sword Venerable was a demigod sovereign, while he was only a sacred venerable. Although they both had the word venerable in their names, they were worlds apart. Guessing, Chu Mu arrived outside the city lord's residence. He was not stopped and entered the city lord's residence without any hindrance. The primordial sword master was sitting on a huge throne in the city lord's residence. Chu Mu greets the city lord. Chu Mu immediately performed 3 sword salutes. No need to be so courteous. A flat, yet grand voice resounded. It contained the profundities of the Grand Tao, and it moved Chu Mu indescribably. For a time, Chu Mu didn't know what to say. Are you curious as to why I'm looking for you? The primordial sword lord could tell that Chu Mu was puzzled. Hence, he spoke with a hint of a smile. Please enlighten me, city lord, Chu Mu said. The first sword lord of the primeval era once roamed the depths of the chaos verse and brought back many treasures. The city lord said, for example, the sword Dao Heavenly Wall is one of them. In addition, the first primordial sword lord also brought back a technique. Technique? Suddenly, Chu Mu felt that this technique was the main point. This is a very strange technique. It's located in a piece of inheritance divine crystal and can only be passed down 10 times. Now, it has been passed down 9 times, but no one has mastered it. After the 10th time, the inheritance divine crystal will automatically shatter and the technique will disappear. The city lord explained, this technique is called the 3 Sages technique. The prerequisite for cultivating this technique is to have sufficient talent in qi cultivation, physique tempering, and spiritual refinement. It's best if all 3 talents are equal and reach a certain level. City lord, do you intend to let me receive the last inheritance? Chu Mu asked. Your qi cultivation, physique tempering, and spiritual refinement talent are equal and have all reached 11-star level, which is unprecedented. Your comprehension talent has reached 12-star level and is extremely high. Perhaps I can't find a more suitable candidate than you, the city lord said. He originally didn't intend to pass down the last inheritance. After all, the divine crystal would disappear once the inheritance was passed down and it was unknown whether he could successfully cultivate it. But thinking about it carefully, it could only be kept as a memento. If there was a suitable candidate, it would naturally be passed down. Chu Mu was undoubtedly the most suitable candidate, especially after watching the battle between Chu Mu and Wu Guangsheng. The city lord finally made up his mind to let Chu Mu receive the last inheritance. Success or failure, it was up to the will of the heavens. Immediately, a resplendent crystal appeared out of thin air and fell in front of Chu Mu. You can accept the inheritance here, the city lord of ancient Sword City said. Okay. Chu Mu grabbed the resplendent crystal. His consciousness came into contact with the crystal and entered it. Chu Mu felt an indescribable mystery. Then, pieces of information flowed out from the crystal and entered his mind through his consciousness. The information was very strange. It was a type of language that had never been seen before. Every word contained the mysteries of the great Tao and the universe. Chu Mu couldn't understand it, but he could understand it. It was very strange. About half an hour later, the resplendent divine crystal's radiance dissipated and disappeared like the wind. The immemorial Sword City's city lord, who had been watching the entire time, had a trace of pity flash through his eyes. He then stared at Chu Mu with some hope. He hoped that Chu Mu could succeed. Otherwise, the disappearance of the divine skill would be an invisible loss. After the divine crystal disappeared, another 2 hours passed. Although the city lord was very curious, he didn't disturb Yixuan. Chu Mu opened his eyes, and divine light flickered. In an instant, an unfathomable mystery appeared, containing the vicissitudes and vicissitudes of the universe. "How is it?" the city lord asked. "City lord, I have received the inheritance of the three saints technique, but whether I can cultivate it or not, I still need to comprehend it." Chu Mu said, "Okay, go back and comprehend it. Let me know if you can cultivate it or not." The city lord said. Then, a dot of light landed in front of Chu Mu and attached itself to Chu Mu's skin, letting Chu Mu know that it was a one-time thing used to communicate with the city lord. "Chu Mu, farewell." Chu Mu bowed again and turned to leave. After leaving the city lord manor, Chu Mu returned to the unique inn and immediately went into seclusion. The information in his mind was still there. Although he couldn't understand the words, Chu Mu could slowly comprehend the profoundness within. The Three Saints Technique was the name of this cultivation technique. The Three Saints Technique mainly cultivated the essence, qi, and spirit, refining essence to become a saint, refining qi to become a saint, refining spirit to become a saint. The reason why it was called refining instead of cultivating was because it required refining. There were undoubtedly very few cultivation techniques that cultivated the essence, qi, and spirit. Now, Chu Mu had only encountered the second one. The first one was the truth-seeking technique that he had created himself. But compared to the Three Saints technique, there were still many differences. In the biggest aspect, the truth-seeking technique was about cultivating, while the Three Saints technique was about refining. There was an essential difference between the two. Suddenly, Chu Mu felt a flash of inspiration in his mind. It was as if a bolt of lightning tore through the sky, tearing apart the darkness. It flashed and disappeared, making it difficult for him to catch it. After thinking for a while, Chu Mu couldn't find the slightest clue. He could only give up for the time being. If he couldn't catch this flash of inspiration in time, it would be too difficult to comprehend it later. However, Chu Mu had a premonition that this flash of inspiration would be of great use to him. "Let's cultivate the Three Saints technique first," Chu Mu said helplessly. The prerequisite for cultivating the Three Saints technique was that the cultivation talent of essence, qi, and spirit had to be equal and reach a certain level. Looking at the current human tribe, it could be said that there were very few people who could achieve this. Perhaps only Chu Mu had achieved this. The cultivation of the Three Saints technique wasn't that easy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have failed the first 9 inheritances. It should be known that those who could receive the inheritances were all peerless geniuses. First, he had to comprehend the mysteries. Only when he fully understood it could he begin to cultivate it and avoid making mistakes. This meditation lasted for an entire month. Chu Mu's understanding of the Three Saint technique grew deeper and deeper, and he vaguely grasped what the Three Saint technique's cultivation was. Refining essence to become a saint, refining qi to become a saint, refining spirit to become a saint. This was the gist of the Three Saints' art. It sounded very mysterious. Of course, this saint had nothing to do with the saints of the eternal ancient realm or the saints of heavenly venerables. It was just a title, a symbol of mystery. Refining essence, qi, and spirit separately into a saint. What does this saint represent? Chu Mu pondered. After a month of meditation, he more or less understood the difference between the Three Saints technique and the truth-seeking technique. The truth-seeking technique was a cultivation method. It cultivated essence, chi, and spirit to become great true force. However, the Three Saints technique was more like a secret method. It refined essence to become a saint, refined chi to become a saint, refined spirit to become a saint. It was like refining essence, chi, and spirit into a saint. This saint was the key. After a month of comprehension, Chu-Mu had a very deep understanding of the Three Saint technique. However, he didn't have much of a clue as to what this saint was. Chu-Mu felt that this was the key point of the Three Saint technique. If he did not understand the meaning of the saint, he would not be able to cultivate the Three Saints technique. Perhaps he could force himself to cultivate it, but Chu-Mu felt that something was wrong. After thinking about it, he decided not to cultivate it for the time being, unless he could decipher the meaning of the saint. What was a saint? Chu-Mu did not know. This question was 10 times, 100 times more profound than what was a sword. Since he had not completely deciphered the Three Saints technique, Chu-Mu did not inform the city lord. He planned to tell him after he had deciphered it. After another month of meditation, Chu-Mu still had no clue. He had to give up temporarily. Time was limited. It was better to improve his strength first. As for the Three Saints technique, it would depend on his luck. After all, even if he cultivated the Three Saints technique after deciphering it, Chu-Mu didn't know what benefits it would bring him. That was an unknown. Yet, with the various aspects he currently grasped, once he improved them, they could all increase his strength. Chapter 2209. Great Thick Earth Sword. Li Han's huge sword slashed out, causing the earth to tremble. Chu-Mu's sword light rotated and broke through the air, creating a crack in the sword light of the Great Thick Earth Sword. He instantly pierced through and attacked Li Han. The sword light chained together as if there was no beginning and no end. It was endless. For a moment, Li Han couldn't distinguish between the real and the fake. From the countless chained sword light, the brightest sword light suddenly shot out and pierced towards Li Han from an unbelievable angle. It left a mark between Li Han's eyebrows. "Big brother, the more I fight with you, the more I find that I can't beat you." Li Han smiled bitterly. This was the 10th time he had fought with Chu-Mu. He originally thought that with each battle, the gap between him and Chu-Mu would be narrowed. He didn't expect that the gap would only widen. Now he was easily defeated by Chu-Mu. In fact, Li Han didn't know that the gap between him and Chu-Mu wasn't as big as he thought. It was just that after a dozen battles, Chu-Mu had already familiarized himself with his fighting style. How he attacked and how he responded were all under Chu-Mu's control. Under these circumstances, it was undoubtedly easier for Chu-Mu to defeat him. Li Han was different from Shen Lintao. After losing the competition that day, he was willing to accept his loss and wholeheartedly called Chu-Mu big brother. Since Li Han was like this, Chu-Mu didn't oppose. On the contrary, he gave Li Han a lot of pointers. After all, Li Han was his first little brother. Cultivation was about combining work and rest. It was also about combining movement and stillness. Blindly cultivating in seclusion wasn't very effective. Only by cultivating in seclusion for a period of time and then coming out to fight with others could the results be better. Li Han, your sword technique is heavy and heavy. Chu-Mu once again pointed out the shortcomings of Li Han's sword technique, allowing him to adjust and improve as much as possible. "Okay, I'll go back and continue cultivating. See you next time." Chu-Mu finished speaking and turned to leave. "Wait, big brother." Seeing that Chu-Mu was about to leave again, Li Han said helplessly. He had originally thought that he was a cultivation maniac, but who would have thought that his big brother was even more of a cultivation maniac than him? "There's something big happening today. Aren't you interested, big brother?" Li Han asked. "What is it?" Chu-Mu asked casually. "Big brother, you also know that our human race is a big race. Apart from that, there are also many small races. Some of the small races exist independently, but there are also some small races that depend on other big races. Li Han said, "The Snow Clan is one of the small clans that depend on the human race. Because the Snow Clan is a clan that cultivates swords, they're similar to the human race. This time, some of the Snow Clan members want to enter the ancient sword city's young geniuses camp to study. Is this a big deal?" asked Chu Mu. In his opinion, it shouldn't be a big deal for a prodigy of the Snow Clan to enter the human prodigy camp. If it was an ordinary prodigy of the Snow Clan, it wouldn't be a big deal. But this time, it's the Snow Clan's holy maiden, said Li Han excitedly. "Big brother, did you know that the Snow Clan hasn't had a holy maiden for 1,000 years? It's not that they don't want a holy maiden. It's just that they haven't reached the standards set by their ancestors. Now, the holy maiden is extremely important to the Snow Clan. Allowing her to enter the prodigy camp to study shows that the Snow Clan is completely dependent on the human race. That's something for the higher-ups to consider. It's still too early for us." Chu Mu couldn't help but smile. Big brother, the Snow Clan's holy maiden only appears once in 1,000 years. It's said that she's a peerless genius, but I don't know how many stars she has. My guess is that it won't be lower than 11 stars. In the future, she'll be able to rule the entire Snow Clan, said Li Han. If you can obtain the holy maiden's favor, you'll have the support of a small clan. A small clan couldn't compare to a large clan. It sounded weak, but it wasn't. Small clans didn't necessarily have half-gods, but there were still many rulers. Even if a small clan was weak, it couldn't be that weak. Besides, the Snow Clan had once had a half-god ruler. They were stronger than ordinary small clans. "I think the holy maiden will soon go to the temple of God's monument to test her talent. Big brother, why don't you come with us?" said Li Han. "You can go by yourself," said Chu Mu. He wasn't interested in such things. Then, Chu Mu turned around and left. But Chu Mu wasn't interested. But that didn't mean other people weren't interested. When they heard that the holy maiden of the Snow Clan was coming, the young prodigies and peerless geniuses of the prodigy camp all went to the temple of God's monument. Many people immediately realized that so many geniuses and peerless geniuses who were rarely seen in the past had appeared. The holy maiden of the Snow Clan. Chu Mu returned to the unique tower and was about to continue cultivating when those words popped into his head. He had a strange feeling that it had something to do with him. "The holy maiden of the Snow Clan." Chu Mu repeated and frowned. He was lost in thought. "I've only met the Snow Clan twice," thought Chu Mu. The first time was in the 100 Battles arena of the 100 Battle City. The second time was when he saved 3 sword cultivators from a half-great emperor of the Demon Clan. That was all. Chu Mu was sure that he had never seen the holy maiden of the Snow Clan. It was the first time he had even heard of her. So why did he have such a feeling? Forget it, I'll go and see. Chu Mu thought to himself. He was rather helpless. He originally didn't want to go, but this feeling kept lingering in his mind, causing him to be unable to calm down and cultivate. He left the unique tower and the young geniuses' camp. When he arrived at the Divine Monument Hall, Chu Mu was startled. There were so many people there. Chu Mu was stupefied. The holy maiden of the Snow Clan was so charming. There were so many people that they couldn't enter the Divine Monument Hall. They had to wait outside. At that moment, the temperature in the air seemed to have dropped. Snowflakes were falling from the sky. In the distance, a group of people in white clothes was approaching. They looked slow, but in fact, they were moving very fast. They arrived in front of everybody in the blink of an eye. Those people in white clothes were ice cold. They all had snow-white swords on their backs. They were from the Snow Clan. Apart from ice-cold chi, they also released sharp chi, proving that they were sword cultivators. Their chi was at least half-step great emperors. The Snow Clan's sword cultivators were divided into 2 groups. On the left were men, and on the right were women. There were 10 people in each group. In the middle were 3 people. On the left were middle-aged men. Their chi was obscure. They were great emperors. The woman on the right was also middle-aged, but she looked seductive. She was also a great emperor. In the middle of the two great emperors was a little girl who looked less than 10 years old. Everybody realized that the little girl was the most important person of the Snow Clan. The other members of the Snow Clan were there to protect her. Is that the holy maiden of the Snow Clan? She looks very young. Judging from her bone age, she's not even 10 years old. However, her cultivation has actually reached the holy exalted level. What terrifying talent! Even though she looks very young, she's very beautiful. The Holy Virgin of the Snow Clan did not seem to be affected at all. Her expression was calm and somewhat cold. Everybody was talking about her. Chu Mu was standing in the middle of the crowd. When he saw the little girl, he couldn't help but shake. He looked like he had been struck by lightning. His eyes were wide open, and his face was full of shock. Chu Mu rarely had such an expression. Every time it appeared, it meant that something extremely shocking had happened. She had a head of flawless silver white hair and skin that was as delicate as crystal. The moment he saw her, some of Chu Mu's memories surged forth. The snow race girl seemed to have noticed Chu Mu's gaze and looked over. The moment she saw Chu Mu, her delicate face melted like an iceberg and showed a smile. That smile was extremely short, not even a tenth of a second, but everyone saw it clearly. Look, the holy maiden is smiling. She's smiling at me. Bullshit, she's smiling at me. Everybody started arguing. She was the holy maiden of the Snow Clan, even though she looked like a little girl less than 10 years old. Only the girl herself knew who she was smiling at. It seems like she still has her memories. However, he didn't immediately walk forward. Right now, in such a situation, it wasn't a good time to do so. The swordsman of the Snow Clan walked into the Hall of the Divine Steel. Chu Mu took the opportunity to walk into the Hall of the Divine Steel. The Holy Virgin of the Snow Clan walked to the Divine Talent Steel. She placed her small, crystal-like hand on the steel and closed her eyes. Everybody looked at the Holy Maiden of the Snow Clan and then at the Divine Talent Steel. At this moment, every second felt like an eternity. 15 minutes felt like decades. The Holy Maiden's hand left the Divine Talent Steel. Then the first row of the Divine Talent Steel lit up one by one. 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars. Very quickly, she surpassed 9 stars and reached 10 stars. That was the level of a peerless genius. Nobody was surprised because before that, there had been many rumors saying that the Holy Virgin of the Snow Clan was a peerless genius. Immediately after, she reached 11 stars. But that wasn't the upper limit. She reached 12 stars. 12 stars! Everybody was astonished.